Okay, we need to kick the workshop off if I can. Just want to say we have apologies from Scott and from Mark. Tonight, George, who's sitting to my right, he is the new Alice, who is on maternity leave, and she successfully had the baby, I think.
Yes, that's the baby girl. Yeah, successfully. Like a baby I.
Yes.
Successfully had a baby.
Yeah, quite well. That's all good.
Husband all right?
Yeah.
I think he would have done okay. Anyway, we also have Jasmine sitting in the gallery from planning. Nigel was there.
Sorry.
You all know Nigel anyway, and Carolyn and Chris, so welcome to everyone. Tonight is going to be good because we're not just talking about the budget. We've actually got something else to talk about which will be really enjoyable.
Thanks, Mark.
We have had 4 weeks straight of budget, I think. Are there any comments on the notes from the last workshop? It's fairly self-explanatory, I think. If not, we can head straight into, wait for it, more budget stuff. It's just really just to finish off some of the queries you had from last week, and also specifically to talk about Churchill and Prospect Road. So, maybe June?
Yep. Thank you, Mark. So tonight's session is to wrap up some of the elected member had, to look at FLEG, to look at southern end of Churchill Road costing, how would it affect the long-term financial plan, and also to provide some rating models that we have discussed last week. So we have a new growth figure, but just marginally, it's 0.56, so it's negligible, which is only 1,500, so we have not factored it in here for now, okay? So I've sent elected member a printout with updated responses to the questions and answers. They are in purple. Hopefully there's yeah, so we're just going to go through the printout and the list. So during the last week, we have a couple of issues we need to talk about. The local history officer position. There's some emails circulated. And another one that specifically we want to talk about is the additional costs for the consultation. That's right.
I must say also Scott Roberts emailed about the Greece arrestor issue, so we need to talk about that.
Sorry?
Greece trap issue there.
Greece.
Yeah, so that needs to be discussed tonight as well.
Yep. So based on the information that's provided, have you had a chance to have a look at the printout, the attachment? If not, they're on the screen. So in terms of the traineeship issues, so the executive executive team has met, and it was decided that this traineeship for this particular coming year to be reside with the depot, because in the past the traineeship has always been in the Civic Center Corporate Services Department. So we had 4 traineeships since about 8 years ago, 2006 or 2008. 2 ended up with our staff through natural attrition. So we figure this particular one will be reside with the depot. So there's a lot more description that has been put on there to support that particular traineeship. The elected member has decided to be included. So that is, so I don't know whether you want to go through by exceptions. Are there any particular issues that you felt that we haven't answered?
Just have a quick look at that. It says a lot. Doing that, they will be doing though.
Well, they will be looking, really it's about further developing our planning as far as city maintenance, but also looking at our planning around building maintenance and formulating that program. So they'll really be an asset officer, which will be cutting across the strategy arm of council and also the operations arm.
Young 17-year-olds and
what we're hoping, yeah, it's a traineeship. So what we're looking at is part of it is on-the-job training by providing information from senior officers, and partly it'll be at a school, at a training facility.
But if I can add to myself, that's the sort of information I'd just giving me the apple pie stuff isn't, it's what they're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Is part of it too. So I'd like to see when we look at these things next year. We might have got some of these through a lot easier if people actually knew what the hell it was all about. But we just didn't provide detail. But yeah, okay, I'm okay with that. That's what you think.
Any other views about that item? Everyone comfortable with that?
Just the age group. So it'll be school students. If you said do you mean like a learning institution like a high school or a TAFE?
We were actually aiming for a little bit above that, but yeah, not at a school. Yeah, a bit above that.
Just looking at the federal budget where they're like 25, you can't access the dole.
Yes.
So covering a whole range of what is considered youth, not just...
Yes, yeah, not just people straight out of high school.
Okay. Any other questions? So we'll do it by exceptions. So I don't know if it's clear for you that it's coded in purple and in black. The black are exactly how it was. The purple are additional information that has been added. So are there any particular one that you want to look at?
Scroll down, perhaps, go through to the...
We just scroll through. Yep.
So 3 trainees.
Yep.
Keep going. Next purple one there.
So we talk about social hotspot briefly. We say information will be provided prior to the project actually commencing to identify the location and the number of the hotspots.
There'll be a report to council, so you can choose to support or otherwise at that time.
Yeah, that could be a potential saving.
That's right. The budget is in there currently. Yeah.
Next purple one's the fine enforcement fee. Questions on that one?
Yeah. All right.
I'm still not wildly convinced, I'd rather we get 10 times as much, not. What does it spend 17 to get 6, 17?
There's some work going on with this as well at the moment with the Auditor General's Department actually reviewing the fines, the initial fine fee. They may be increased in order to subsidise some of this fee as well.
Yeah. But not confirmed yet.
We don't have that yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So something to keep track of.
Yep.
We want to work within 6 months' time to see
That's right.
hey,
There's also a big push from LGA about a lot of all these fees and charges that have been kept.
Yeah, guys.
There's also a big push from LGA to actually review a lot of the fees, statutory fees and charges that we currently basically it's very under. So there is a big review at the moment, a submission to the LGA to actually for the state government to review them. So that is all of them.
I'm actually on the working party for that, and we happen to have put forward to the state government. It appears that a lot of these fees have just been going around each year. People have been signing them off and not actually. Like the rate search fee, you would have seen increase significantly last year. This year there's a hit with about 5 groups. I know building and planning fees are on it, health inspection fees are on it. The others escape me off the top of my head, but sorts of things that we're actually asking the state to have a bit of a good look at.
So can I just understand the maths here with your minuses and no pluses and what's going on? This was going to cost us $7,600. Was that the budget line we were asked to approve? And we said surely we're going to make money out of this rather than lose $7,600. What's this telling us?
So essentially what's happened is that, we will incur $7,000 of recovery costs. At the moment we're unsure how much our income will go up by, but based by the fact that the state government haven't actually gazetted the fees. They're still working through that process and we expect it to be done late June. The money that we're looking to recover, while we think that will be greater than what we currently are, that's previously recognised income. So we've already recognised that income and we've got a debtor sitting on our balance sheet. So this is about recovering our existing debtor that we've already...
So you're saying in previous years we've fully recovered those bad debts?
They're getting into the science of accounting. We recognise the income at the time of raising the fee and we grow a debtor. So these debtors have been growing over a number of years, and as a sector, we've campaigned the state government to come up with a new way of actually enforcing these costs. So previously it went through the courts, now it will be going through the Attorney General's Department and we'll have access to the same services that the state government has access to. So that will allow them to actually put infringements on people's driver's licence, registrations. didn't have that power.
I understand the mechanism. I just can't believe there's not a benefit to us in doing this. So surely...
There will be a cash flow benefit where we should see a better recovery, but as far as operating return, there won't be an improvement to operating.
Right.
But there
We
will
don't write off those bad debts ever. They're still on the books for 100 years. I find that very hard to believe. But
At the end of the day, the court will award a payment scheme. It's not enforceable. Once it's with the courts, they'll be paying off $5 a month or something very small. So we're still, the fine is still a collectible. So from an accounting point of view, we still hold on to it as a debtor. But the payment rate that we're actually getting the money back is so slow that hopefully this process will now speed that up.
it still seems odd. Could I ask for a report at some later stage on what bad debts we're covering against these fines? I cannot believe we've got them since 1919. I would have thought we're writing off bad debts at some point, and this would help us write off less bad debts, and therefore there's a benefit to the operating result. If there's not, I'll be incredibly surprised and want a good kind of explanation about why that's the case. We're understanding something, but it just seems odd that we carry debts forever.
We will. Bad debt is usually reviewed every year. It's reviewed every year on the possibility, or if there's an arrangement in place. So long as there's an arrangement in place, we do not write off bad debt. But the bad debt itself is reviewed every year. We can provide some notes on the content. Yep.
Is there some mechanism in there that whereby they get fined and a percentage is added if they're a late unpaid debt or a late debtor? Because then that would, to me, possibly build up to enough to make them want to pay it. At the moment, it's only a mildly dead quick. They don't care.
Yeah, from what I understand, Greg, you might be able to expand on. There is follow-up and reminder fees that are applied to our fine.
But then that's almost a bit of bluff to get them to pay. And then if they insist on not paying, then we need to either write the debt off or pursue the debt.
So under the Act, this fee is not directly recoverable. So some of the court costs, like when we send rate collections to follow-up through our debt collector, there's some court costs that we can directly pass on to our ratepayers. This $18 fee won't be directly, and that's why we're hoping to get it up front.
Hopefully they see that to
If there were a lot of money, it'd be just worth buying a Commodore with 200 windows.
That's for big dogs.
You could pick up the money.
So we'll provide some more written information. Let's move on.
It's not changing anything because I'll just see where we left that, and the next one I think was number 8, then it goes up. I should wait to another page. But the questions I had was, I think, Jas, it was around 47 and 53, I think. And specifically, one was about the cost of Prospect Road. One was about Churchill Road, and the thing was, what my question was, so it's not going to change anything. The question was around, and I can't remember the dollars, but whatever dollars were, was that to it was for the upkeep of those 2 roads. My question went around was, whatever the figure, was that using our people to do that or subcontractors to do it? It was question 47 and 53, I think. It's not going to change it. It's not in the questions thing somehow, but...
I know what you're referring to. Majority of that budget is to do buying materials. Some of it is contractors, which is more specialised. Like it might be irrigation, but the majority of it is about materials.
And our troops doing the work.
Exactly.
Have we got any left?
So that's project 45.
Yeah, that was, and it wasn't going to change a thing. I had that interest in that answer.
Yep. So that's project 45 and 52.
Was it? I was close. Yeah,
okay, thank you. All right, we'll continue. So we wanted, is there any question on that page? No?
So this is the next page.
Yep. So we are now on page 5. We're now on page 5 of the page. So definitive time crops. There were some questions about.
Alan, you had a concern about this one, didn't you? The native
Yep, that was one of your questions.
Yeah, but I thought we pulled it
Yeah,
out.
it's covered, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So 102, is there another update?
I think Alan's got.
Oh, sorry.
It's just then when Greg explained it, I can see it comes out, but when Greg explained it the other week, and it was 5 trees, the fence, the border, and some in planting that, and that, as you know, but that's the area I was talking about. You could never plant 5 trees. It would have only been 2 at the most planted into motion. The border was only a tree stump that was cut down from another tree, and
Well, it's probably to replace that.
yeah, so, and I forget how many thousands of dollars, and my main concern when I raised it, so I accept, and it was a new fence, but I accept that, but what I was really looking for, particularly when I said that I'd pay for it, I was talking about just 2 trees that fit in there, that just keep that growth continuously growing, you know, of the same thing. If we wanted to put 5, we'd have to make a whole new,
Cut these down.
shift. That's my other thing.
5 new ones. Yep. Now, look, without having a look at the whole park, when I quizzed the officer, I talked about, yes, getting a couple in there, but there's other gaps around the park. And I think that's what they're talking about.
I'd like to see it all like it, but that's the corner, Christina. That's her little plaque on the end that done.
Yes, I know.
And that's what I originally thought. It was just so it kept those trees, and so would it be about 10 years we done that, Chris?
It's not there,
Yeah. So in that sort of time, that if 2 more had sort of been planted in there, it just keeps that growth. Because I don't know how long Nunu's lived, and that was all I was originally chasing, just to keep that going.
So you can follow it.
Oh, well, yep.
Okay.
Okay, the next one will be community development plan. That hasn't changed. Okay, sorry, we just had maybe incorrectly labeled purple. Now the next one is local history officer 073. There's some emails that has been circulating around elected members. So we'll take this opportunity to talk about it. Currently, yep.
And Christina, you raised it, didn't you? Diana?
yes.
Yep, sure.
Upset about it, but I think it brings the Prospect Library, so she was writing as the chairperson of that letter that I sent to all. And the local history group is also and the firm is with our friends of Prospect Library, so that's I think they've made quite a good point. I think even if it was considered for the reinstatement of the financial year that particularly covers the next year, and also the
Cheers, Christina.
yeah, planetary in is put into the budget proposal.
How much was it again?
7.5 a day.
It was
7.5.
But to go
So the 7.5.
3.5 hours
Full
to
day.
go 7.5 hours a week, and from 7 additional $7,000.
Oh, fluctuated over the years.
That's the one from Greg.
Yeah,
That's-
I've got an email. I've got the same email from
Yeah,
Bruce.
thank you. Yes. So to increase it by from the current allocation of $7,575 to perhaps doubling to $15,000 now. So we'd be adding another $7,574, and this will be an increase from the current 3.8 hours a week to 7.6 hours. I thought that was particularly significant given the, what was happening in that particular area next year. And also, I think that pointed out to me by a gentleman to me that that's the grease trap. So what's
But you just said the gentleman.
So what's
That's the grease
So
trap.
it's you.
yeah.
Grease trap lasts a lot longer.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
My alternate concern with this is, as I mentioned in the email, we have an art collection, and we have, despite my nagging and cursing, very put together a list of everything, who donated it, or who donated it, or even where it is. A long trek to see where it's somewhere. And I mean, it's pretty ordinary to be in that situation at the council that we can't afford somebody to document that sort of information, to look at our art collection, put together a plan of where it is, where it's from, what it's all about. The other one that more disturbs me is, and I've also tried to push, you've got a problem, Councillor Breeze? Yes, in a way to, the other one is on our website, which I was going to ask was if it was part of the history collections portfolio, and that is that swathe of photographs we had on our website showing all of the houses that used to be here and a whole horde of other things that have happened. It's been deleted, it would appear. It doesn't exist anymore.
Well, Leanne's expertise in that
And
Coming back to the actual item.
Yeah, two couple of things I want to say. I'd like to support, if Chris is going that way, doing it. I want to bypass what Ashley said, because I think that's absolutely important as well. But I think they're two, well, they maybe can be one thing. But I asked the young sister sitting next to you one day to find out a painting for me, and she put a great effort in, but it still took a couple of days just to find it, you know.
It should be available for everybody
Yes.
in the city.
So, but I want to stick to the first one. I think it's very important, as some of you know, that I do take the kids around and walking, and it's increasing in what they do. The interest is increasing in our area of what they do, and particularly talking to some of the older kids at the RSL and in the schools, because next year we're coming into not really a war person, I don't like the idea, but we're coming into the anniversary, the 100-year business war, and there's a lot of interest in it. And by my little bit of history stuff going over there and seeing Leanne's I think the main person that does it and other people help, I feel it's pretty important sort of thing to do. So my vote would go that we do increase it to whatever Christina was saying there.
Okay, we will come back to the art issue. I just want to clarify this one. David, any views?
Oh, I think it's a good thing to have. It's nice to have, but it's a good thing. We cut it last year and we got less, and that slows things down a bit. It is an important year coming up. People will be asking a lot of questions. There will be school visits that need to be catered for. I'm wondering whether, or as part of this, that some of those other items that Ashley spoke about get started as part of that work, but particularly the syndicate that can be brought into scope. And I'd be happy to see funded out of a reduction, probably $5 grand in the wireless hotspots program. I'm not convinced that we need to do the wireless hotspots. There's plenty of businesses that can do them, and that's a way of funding. I agree with Alan that the cataloguing art issue is a separate issue, but anything historic can be wound into this role, provided there's capacity. And 3.5.
Bruce, any thoughts?
Yeah, actually, he just jumped on something. Yeah, Alan was talking. You jumped in over when he was talking.
Can we just stick to it?
No, well, he had to go at me. So, you know.
Have you any thoughts on this particular issue?
Yeah, I quite like that idea. In fact, I didn't know I was the one who brought it up. last year, sometimes without being recorded and all that last year. And in fact, actually, I think you had a go at me about it. I wanted to do a collage of artworks in one painting.
Monica.
Well, it seems pretty important, doesn't it? So I know there's lots of wants and lots of little projects that we get involved in, but 3.5 hours isn't even a project. By the time you get in, get started, get organised, doesn't leave much scope for work. Not saying she doesn't work, but you know what I mean.
The investment also gets more than an additional half a day, because what happens with Leanne is that having that just half a day a week is that a reasonable amount of that is taken in working with the local history group to provide some of that admin support around what they do, so that they can then volunteer to provide us with a whole lot of work that doesn't have an additional cost, except for that additional that original admin support. And so I think by increasing the hours back to what it was, you'll also find that that supports the history group to do even more as well, because they do rely on, although they do fantastic work themselves, they rely on that bit of extra research and a bit of extra admin support. So I think we get a bit more out of it than just what Leanne puts in, which is she has a lot of knowledge as well. The other thing is that Leanne's at the Light also does library hours, so she is there. About to lose the other person that has considerable knowledge and background. Anne Gowan used to be local history officer, and you know, and that knowledge, that 23 years of knowledge, is about to walk out the door. Now, hopefully, we have a lot of that recorded, but it might be an opportune time to increase it at least in the next year, with that in mind as well.
I just forgot to declare an interest if I'm supposed to.
You're only in a workshop situation, so you're fine. So generally there's support around the table, I gather, for that particular position. I want to come back to the artwork issue now, if I can. I recall that we put a number of budget bids forward to undertake that work. And I think it's important body work, but it's always been knocked out. Is that something you want to see brought back for further consideration? Because we would have that information already to hand. It's not something we can just simply do at this time.
Oh, no.
It needs to be carefully managed. So is that something you're interested in seeing?
Maybe.
Yeah.
And on this history, I think Alan, well, I think email too. The ANZAC.
This year we were fielding, we've been obviously 100 years since the start of World War I. We had the group that wanted to do the St Helens, that were bringing the horses and all of that sort of stuff for the schools to visit. Now you can imagine that at 3.5 hours a week and doing the things she was already doing, one of the reasons we didn't proceed with that is that we just didn't feel we had the resources to do it. So I think there is, you know, this year there's already been increased inquiries because of that, and I think that's just going to
Should have taken
go
that
through
long
the
to
roof.
clean up the rear end, drop it.
Exactly.
The other change from when we discussed it last budget to this budget is since then there's been a change in the school's history curriculum, and so now it's very much working with primary schools, and they are asking for assistance, you know, and information, and so with some of the members of the history group and again, we've been able to put together resource kits to, you know, so that they can actually then have it and borrow it themselves instead of, you know, the ANZ having to do a whole lot. So that's extra work on.
Okay, so with the agreement of the table, we'll put it back in, or put it in.
Yeah, can I just come back with Mark's blessing? The Mayor made a suggestion of reducing one of the other projects by about $5,000 to cover this. Is that something you want to do? If I can just highlight at this point, the current status of the operating surplus is actually $8,960. That's our current bottom line. So Do that, yeah, there's $1,300 left as a surplus in the budget, which is hardly worth talking about.
Is there something left in that Wi-Fi budget?
There is, and the intention was to do a report to council for consideration, and I agree with David that we'll probably find some savings. It's just, at this moment, it would be a guess.
It's item 31, it's a total of
Right.
30 grand.
That's
So
right.
there's several projects within it. One of them is the social hotspots of 15 grand. I just suggested make it 10. Make it something.
Oh, yeah.
And we can do, and if we report back to you and it's not adequate, we can always get a budget variation. So it's a matter, it's just a judgment call.
Or scrap it.
That's right. I have no issue with either way. It needs to be, as long as we're informed.
There was a saving in the consultation around the garden, Memorial Gardens thing, down to $3,000. I don't know how much of a saving that was.
That is.
Well, it was less than the 4,000 from the week before, but the 4,000 hasn't been put in yet.
Right.
So it's an actual cost. That's where I'm heading. It's a cost. Not a saving.
A virtual cost.
Ah, okay.
It's an investment in your community. That's where
So
I'm
where
looking
does
for.
it feature in the 8,000 surplus?
Has it been added in yet?
So no adjustment has been made. The 8,000 took into account of everything from the last, that is adopted from the last workshop.
Which was the first page, not the second page of the shopping list.
That's right. Only the first page of the shopping list. Correct. That's all has been adjusted. If that 4,300 has not been, 3,000 was not part of the shopping list. So these are new information that is provided now. So nothing has been added. So the adjustment to the budget only what went through workshop last week.
Oh, sorry, it's a new item.
Yeah, that's right.
Got a question from Bruce. So.
Just on next year's, it seems it's 100 years and that. How much money we actually allocated for that? To the site?
We have got two spots. Yeah.
We have a grant application, so we'd put in a bid for 32,000, I think it was. It got reduced to 22. So if we're unsuccessful in getting the grant, then we won't have any money.
Well, can we put in 30,000 or something like that? Because I think it's going to be very, very important. I think there's going to be more and more increase in people wanting information on that. I mean, I can't. Fought in the wars. I can't believe we're not actually allocating money.
Just to be fair, if we achieve the grant, we will be able to do something. If we don't achieve the grant,
I'm saying, but
then
that's it is, you know, and there'll be probably thousands of councils putting in for the grants. I actually think that we should say put some money back in there for that. I think it's more important than having employing 3 people.
yeah, fair comment. There's 2 ways of going about it. One is to put the money back in now, or the other way is to wait and see what the outcome of the grant is. If we're unsuccessful, to undertake a budget variation. So there's 2 ways to go.
When will we know about the grant yet?
So it's the grants are made electorate by electorate, so it's with Kate Ellis's office. They're finalising them at the moment to go from her electoral office up to the federal system. So I don't know when. I'm thinking they're thinking July. We'll be notified. 40.
Yeah.
Or 40. And that is working with local history groupings in particular for that
Look at half those people.
development.
Are you comfortable with that?
No.
So you
Knowing what the federal government's going through now with the funds cuts, you know, I'd like to see something put back actually in there.
okay.
Just to cover in case. I mean, we can always take it out. If we do get it, we
It would
can
be
take
a
it out.
saving. Yeah, that's
It would
right.
be a saving.
Any other views around the table on that option? So it's either one way or the other. So.
Status quo.
I'm happy with the status quo. It's easy to put back in, and if you take it out, it creates a problem in the budget. You've got this thing sitting there.
How's it create a problem?
Because if you get the grant, you've got 22 and 22.
But we could always take the 22 out.
You can always put it in.
The same as all the other things here, with maybe ifs and buts, we could put it back in and take it out. So
Maybe we support something, a grant.
Any other views?
Well, I think, yeah, it's most probably and then, you know, as long as we don't split out and it comes back, we
Exactly.
back in.
And the amounts is something to consider too. I'm not happy to just pluck 30,000 out of the air and go with that.
This will be a considered figure. Yeah.
Know what we might spend it on.
We need to have a specific project, like details.
That would be provided.
I'm just saying that the application we put in for the grant could actually form the project that we take that to. So it's been costed, it's been outlined, it's been partners have been identified. So we have a project ready to go, funded by grant, fingers crossed, or not funded by grant, which could easily come back to council.
I think that's all.
Well, I think that remark by Ash is quite offensive to our war debt, by saying what you said, actually. Those who fought in the Great Wars...
Can we stick to the agenda?
You're the bloke that wants to cut the budget at every turn, and now you're on a soapbox telling us how important it is to put the budget up.
Don't you as well?
And you waited to the last second. You didn't bring it up last week before, did you?
I think
When all the budget bids were coming in.
When I bring it up?
I think that's enough for that discussion. Alan, any thoughts?
Why is that? I just want to add, and way back to your first comment, Bruce, and that I've done a little bit of walking around and talking with the people behind me, and I think a lot of effort's been put in. I think government would not go back and do it for the whole philosophy. So I would have thought we should have had something in and just been track. But working with Caroline, having a look at a few things of what's going on, I think the track's right. And they won't go back on the mat. It's like popping them back and let them go. So I don't see them.
So at this stage, we'll leave it out, and if unsuccessful, we'll get the report to council. Move on.
Yeah, the next topic is one of the other issue that we have. It's about the consultation for Memorial Garden play-space project.
We had a conversation about doing the consultation, hopefully last lot of consultation for the Memorial Gardens play space in conjunction with the consultation for the memorial shelter, so that we're not going out twice and spending too much money and confusing everybody. In doing that, we went back through the budget of the detailed design and specifications we're doing at the moment to make sure that to see what was included in that and make sure we had enough money to do both the consultations. We think we're a little bit underdone to combine both of those, and to be honest, hadn't really budgeted for the consultation with the shelter because we didn't see that originally getting into the budget. So that's a small amount to just finish that process off. I think we need to go back out, and we've basically we've missed it in the budget because we've got the capital cost and not the consultation cost.
So this is to go over the final design for the playground?
Yeah, so we would come back, we would seek endorsement to go out for the final consultation on that, do that with that money and the heritage, the memorial shelter at the same time. And so essentially that's printing and advertising costs.
Everyone good with that?
That's additional.
Okay, next item.
So the next two items we will park. We will go to a separate spreadsheet in a minute to talk about plaque and the southern end of Churchill Road. So if you can bear with us, we have a different presentation in a minute. So we'll continue with this list. There's additional information for 2021 and 23. If there's and 25. If there's any, are there any information that needs clarification? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Harris. So that is on page 9 now, C20, just those on purple, 20, 21 and 23. C15.
What's really money taken out of this?
C15.
Consultants?
Oh, there's a separate, there is a plaque. We'll come up in a minute. Yeah. Yep.
My problem was, although I don't want to make someone any better than me, he can seem to read it. I couldn't read it, that's why when I got to the end I couldn't read those.
Oh.
So, as you learn,
On your iPad, okay.
I could even read it less on that.
G20 went out, didn't it?
Same dog, nothing has changed. Yeah, so everything was emailed. Oh, when you say went out, that means it's not in the budget. That's right. Sorry, I'm thinking about
None of
it.
these
None of these are in the budget.
Right, they are all not in the budget. But it's just that further information was got. Yep. All right. Sorry.
Is everyone okay with that, or is still reading?
Not really. I mean, I'd like to see C20 and C21 in the budget.
T and 21.
Me too.
See,
We haven't got the capacity though.
C21,
Sorry.
we're 20 able to fund
Sorry,
it.
hang on. I'm having a big problem here.
One is in there.
No, this is a budget bid from the start.
Sorry.
And it's about a discussion of whether it should go back in. I think it's
Sorry,
pretty.
C2021 is in there, isn't it?
I'm happy to be respectful of you. If you're not, then it's going to be really hard for me to just, participate respectfully with everybody.
C20.
Your behaviour is starting to influence me, and I don't like it. I don't like it either. Well, then you can choose what you want to do about that. I'm asking for these items C20, C21. I understand they're worth about 30, 40 grand in total.
Verify, they are in there. C20 and C21 are currently in the budget. C23 is out.
C20.
C20 has got, you're right, it's the 20,000.
I was a bit confused because I thought that we'd given them some support.
That's right.
When you said that 3 of them are out, just clarify again. C20.
C20, we've got 20,000 in there. C21, we've got 14,000 in there. The arm is out. C23, the arm is out. Sorry.
When you do this next year, put up there in or out so we know. We haven't all got recall.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that.
Got what?
Recall, remembering every budget line. Total recall. Yeah.
Can I just make a comment? I support the 20 and 21 being in there. The 23, I reckon, I don't know what day it was, it must have been the end of last week or even, yeah, it was Thursday, Friday, and I listened to these people talking on the wireless going along, and my knowledge of rubbish went right out the window, of the recycle thing. I've given up because everything I thought I was supposed to be doing, I think was the opposite of what they were saying about pizza boxes, about this.
Right, education.
And it was an education thing. And no doubt, the Minister and others have brought it up here and that, but my knowledge of it, not openly say it. Listen, and I should tell it the truth on the wireless, so to a degree. Well, they don't always. It's not the first time people have told them off. Oh, well, if you got bits of pizza left in the pizza box, you don't put it in the recycle. You put it in the green bin.
True. Only the bits, not the box. The box can go into recycling.
Oh,
The box, they allow it, but now they do. They've decided the fat. Don't put the pizza in.
We can do this lesson with something up. This is the budget discussion.
So for me, I think there's, and that's why it would strengthen my not having the arm at the moment, because I think there's a lot more things that could be done in that basic things in the meantime to try and correct some of those things.
Excellent. Bruce Nick?
C21 Park Furniture, I think Doug from what's name group said that they were interested in doing some things with furniture and that. Remember Doug said they were interested in doing things in parks and gardens as far as maybe we could add in there to talk to Rotary.
And what things are we identifying before they seem to be going a bit more into people things
Working with us at the moment, as I said last week, on street art project, and the one thing I am mindful of is giving them so many options that we don't end up with many or any, rather than working on quite a targeted project with them. And so Carolyn's meeting again with the combined services tomorrow night about the street art project. We'll continue to raise these other ones as well, but obviously they have limited funds to put in if they're putting into the street art project.
Okay, is everyone comfortable with those three? The 2 in and the 1 out? Yep. We'll move on.
C25. So
Is that in or out?
it's in 18,000. So I'll go through that. 18,000 is in. I think at that time was just seeking more information. What is it? So this sheet actually just planned. Yeah. originally planned for additional information, but we will put a column in for ease of reference. So that is just additional information. The question was, is it in our plan? What are the initiatives? And that's the explanation.
Street arrest.
36.
36.
D25, what does it say?
So
Will it pay for itself? Will it ever pay for itself, or when will it pay for itself?
Yeah, that hasn't got in there. It does decrease our, like the depot, for example, we're completely off the grid, but we can get exactly what this will save us on this current building.
So we've said it before, it's a far more compelling proposition to us if you can convince us that this is a capital investment.
Yes.
Which over the period we're writing off the cost, we earn the money back in electricity savings. At the moment, I'm not too excited by it.
No, never has been. What's the amount of money in there on that one?
18,000.
18.
Didn't we have a policy whereby we were going to be going for each of our benefits? No.
Yeah. Well, that was the understanding. That we were going.
It's got to come with the math. We had that on rainwater tax and we realised it was a 400,000 year payback period. Like the one in St Helens Park, 14,000.
Yeah, this is a bit better than that, but yeah, it's a bit better than that.
It just should always come back with an indication.
We are modelling to public and resident.
Yeah.
I think we've got more incentives now, except other than, we're putting our money where our talk.
Part of the modelling should be that we know this is going to save the community money. We're not educating anybody by putting panels up on the roof that no one can see. We're using their ratepayers' money. Unless we're making a saving, they'd be saying, well, give me them. I'll be a model resident and put it up in front of my roof. I mean, the educational panels has gone. People are doing it now to save money.
This is about saving money and reducing carbon footprint.
Because I remember we had the same discussion last year, and I thought we did agree that we would actually look at something like this. Last year, we put panels on our buildings and we'd actually look at it. I think this is a great initiative.
It's always been raised every year, but
last year we actually said we'll actually look at doing something.
And when we do these great things, do we actually have a sign that says that we're doing this? Around on their community hall, they've actually got a sign up there when you go around there and says that we've got this, we've done this.
Yeah, the church. Yes, the other church, isn't it? St Philip's, the other one. United Church.
Anyway.
Another one.
I think though, Christine, the time that there's a need for council to educate the community is long gone. Everybody understands them, they see them on 1,000 roofs. I think people know. Plus, I think for us it's a case of cost-benefit analysis. Does it pay back ever? I would think it might not.
Well,
I think nowadays, though, people see solar panels and it's a subsidy on the poor. That's what they see it as. I'm not going to deny this project because it's, it's saving us money, etc. But I don't think people see solar panels as a green saving device anymore. I think they see it as middle class welfare. But when we had Lauren, she had a brokering process where council brokered deals on solar panels for people. I think that's a far better investment.
Yeah.
So instead of us putting money into infrastructure, having somebody who's able to do who understands what they're doing, understands what's being talked about, and can do a brokering process for the community rather than having modelling of good practice.
the LGA did progress that project as well. Alan, anything?
Yeah. I think for the environment it's good, so eventually it should happen. But to sort of, I support it using in other things at the moment on the grounds that panels are great electricity thing, and one of the questions that was asked to come back was sort of how much electricity they use, and then sheds a big area because of machinery, but as far as the rest, how does it go? So it was that running thing and that. But I see it a bit like broken glass, so we climb across the top of the asbestos to put on panels. You know, if we're going to demonstrate something to people, let's get the asbestos out of our buildings first and then make them good enough to put panels on. You know, I mean, one thing, and I don't know, you know, whether you catch a rhinoceros or a guinea pig, it could be the same sort of thing, but it is, and that's one of the halls that's got asbestos. So if we're going to make it good for the environment, why not get rid of that first, have a clean building, and then have the panels, you know? And I think we should have the panels eventually, because there's a lot of middle class people that might get impressed, and whatever, if that's how they work. I feel guilty that I got them on my roof now. Saved a lot of money to get them. But you know, that, and you know, if some of these things, it's like putting a new steering wheel cover on a truck when you've still got bald tyres, or putting new brakes on with bald tyres. So it's very important, but so's the tyre that goes around. So I'd love to see getting the asbestos out.
But Christina, then Bruce?
Yes, cut off the middle class disappearing. Would the math become more if we looked at putting them on the men shed, because that's the biggest generation or user of electricity. I think what's that a hall with lighting and like this.
You'd have to look at the trees and that down there.
I wouldn't imagine the men's shed separately metered.
No, it's not.
No.
They're together. Yeah.
It just comes straight.
Comes as far as
Bruce?
I mean, I think every year we try and tell council about environmental issues that we should be forcing on ratepayers or what they should be doing. And here's we, the council, what have we done? Environmental or you know, sustainability stuff. What have we done as a council? So listen, we're actually doing what we're preaching as well. We've actually done nothing. And we haven't saved any water because we've been wasting water like buggery.
No, but we still collect water down Churchill Road.
So,
I mean, I think this is a great initiative. I think it should be.
do you support it, Christina? Yes or no?
Well, I guess I was intrigued by the fact because we haven't got subsidies that we like to encourage people to have water tanks. They're gone. Whether this would be better for, I don't know how much
They currently have a project where they connect you through Zen, I think it is.
Yeah.
So that is available. We are available to all.
Anyone.
Yeah. So
I just like a little bit more, I guess, investigation or something.
yeah. So at this stage, in or out, do you think, of the funding?
Well, I'd like to see $18,000 from environmental. Whether it's this or the paid through the OGA thing or whatever.
So a rework of the project, but keeping the funds there. Okay. David, you're...
Oh, first thing, I'm sure we asked for what's the saving before, and we just haven't got it. We need to see it. Second is, I agree this 18 grand could be spent in a lot of ways to improve our environmental performance, but I thought in our strategic plan we were shifting from focus on our own assets to the whole community getting involved in environmental sustainability. This is a legacy project where we still focus on our own buildings. And if we put it up on that relatively flat roof, no one will see it. There'll be no community education benefit. If it was on the men's shed, you'd see it, and we would get a bit more out of it. That's okay. So at this stage, I'm happy to leave 18 grand in for a project of benefit to the community. I'm not wedded to it being on our own building, unless you guys can convince me that we save money and it's cost neutral over a period of, or however long we appreciate it.
800 years.
We can...
No, it's much quicker now because the power generation per capital dollar input is much better.
Yeah, but the council won't get any of these benefits that residential get. This 40, I get 54 a kilowatt.
We've got some other important things to talk about tonight. So what I'm getting is, so far we'll keep going, but keep the money available and then report further the use of it.
Or give it something else.
Unless there's some like demonstration project that demonstrates
Yep, sure,
something.
sure.
And I agree with Alan's other comments. If we've got asbestos, we should be working towards getting rid of it.
Are you happy with your comments already? Keep the money in there, potentially look at other things. Monica, you the same?
Yeah, no, fine.
I think to say we don't have environmental issues on, we've got lots just that we've looked at tonight. Water sensitive urban design, putting water into our all of our thingy-jigs, whatever we call them. We've got all that underwater collection on Churchill Road, watering it. There's bucket loads.
Three bin system.
Huh?
We've got a 3 bin system. We've got food recycling.
Lots. So for me, take the 18,000 out. We are, what is our surplus?
Not,
1,300.
This will not
$5.30 at the moment, isn't it?
to the capital. It will not affect operating.
Capital.
But no, I think that we do a lot. If you know our strategic plan, we do a lot in the environmental area. We just don't put things on roofs anymore. And we made the decision not to in our strategic plan. So it's pointless just putting it aside to think of something at this late stage. Something I would save it and think of something next year that we can work on, workshop on, and come to a decision as a collective group.
Can I?
at this stage,
Sorry, this is my last question. I know you're trying to wind it up, but with smart, what's the sort of smart thing coming in later that we will be compelled to have? I mean, that might be something there.
general view, apart from Ashley, is that we should retain the funds and seeking much more information and consideration of what it would be used for. So we'll run along with those lines at this time. Yep. Okay. Next item.
The grief arrestor.
Here we go. So just refer you to Scott's email.
11,000 is in
I'll
there.
do that. Then there was a letter and information from the club. You may have already seen that. Has everyone seen that?
No.
It's in the. Is it in the?
Is that up in the club? That's the sort of thing that's under Bruce's seat?
Yes.
Scott's in the letter of your way, Matt.
Yeah.
I didn't get anything.
So the club, the
Didn't get it.
the information from the club is essentially that, that their profit and loss was attached, but unfortunately it wasn't, and we're just having trouble getting it from them at the moment. But the key points that they wanted to raise, I think were brought up last week anyway, was that they do actually employ their own greenkeeper and look after the 3 greens, their insurances, gas and electricity, etc. So they do contribute a lot to the upkeep, including the water bill, and have just raised the issue about that they're a volunteer club, etc., and the contribution they make. But I think it is worth remembering that they do make that. Keeping the greens is a really significant expenditure for the club, and that's the key thing they wanted to raise. We will still get hold of their profit and loss. I think they just genuinely thought they attached it and haven't, and then getting back to, volunteer and getting it from them. It's just taking us a little bit of time. But the costs are there. You'll see that there's hardly any difference in the costs between underground and above ground. And you can see the section of the lease there, and I know that there could be some discussion about the third dot point on 3.8.2. Fourth.
Fourth bullet point is absolutely their cost.
The issue is, of course, club have been there for some time. The requirements have changed, and do we expect a community club to go and make this change to run a service that they would think is, something that's a done thing as a bowls club?
Hang on, Bruce put his hand up.
Do we know exactly how much they pay for? So I think it'd be a considerable amount of money, wouldn't it?
I would think so.
It's flat grass.
Under the terms of the lease, I would have thought we could make them pay for it. That's beside the point. They do look after their greens. They do pay their water bill, unlike most other clubs we've got. And it is, as a result of an audit, the building is quite old. So they're not a new lessee in this situation. So I'm happy to, I'm not happy, but I think we need to support it and we need to pay for it and get on with it. Whether it's above ground or underground, look, it's a grand difference, and I think we should put it underground to stop it being run into. Otherwise it'll be up to $1,000 for bollards. I thought it would be much cheaper than that above ground.
Yeah.
Anyone doesn't support the project?
11,000.
11 with the cost. that Paul's put in. Those
Are there any other sites with the possibility that with this we would then have to provide them with a grease arrestor? Are there any other clubs?
Well, aware of that. Is anyone else?
We could argue the point that they do employ a groundkeeper, so that knows the cost to council, that they do pay for their water.
I'm just saying, other ramifications.
Well, not in that area.
Yeah.
Not the Broadview Oval stuff.
No, I just mean generally then.
And then I'm thinking further afield than that.
If, for example, OSA decided to have a kitchen and start providing food, would we then pay for their grease arrestor?
If they pay for their water.
Would that flow?
And groundkeeper.
I think it's a new lease, and they've taken on the building in its current condition and changed the use. Here, I think Deb makes a good point. They've been here for a long time. They've had a kitchen in it since day one. And in fact, we would have approved the building of the kitchen. So it's a moot point. They took the risk on building it, but we technically own it, and they lease it off us. So it's tricky. I think it's about longevity.
It's just good to know what the ramifications might be. That's all.
Don't know though. I don't think we know, do we?
As far as other,
What other clubs are we sure that they've all got grease arrestors?
And we should know. We should know.
We should follow that up.
Yeah.
So, but other than that,
I believe we should do it.
Yeah.
Everyone good with that? I think so.
And just check on our other.
So we include that, okay, Jenny?
The moral.
Put it in there anyway. Yep. C41, which is new fences. New fences. We have 17,000 in there. The comment was to delete the reference to Charles Kane, identify which are the playgrounds. So there's some notes attached for C41, top of the screen. So there are Prospect Garden, Percy Street, Broome Road, Sam Watson, Rackley Reserve, and Woohoo Reserve.
Bruce.
We're on for leaving 17,000. I think it's right. We've talked about this for about two councils that I've been into, so at least the last 7 years that we've talked about fencing. We've always put it off. It's about when we actually funded and left it in. And we go to Wi-Fi money to do some like as well as renewing and putting up proper fences or putting down old ones. I think it should be left in. And quite frankly, I think Cane Reserve should be put back in. Because that's only 3/4 of the way done.
Because Mark's comments last week were that we should be enclosing playgrounds for child safety rather than doing sort of broader...
That is a playground there.
No.
Cane Reserve, yeah. Where the Baton Club is.
No, Cane Reserve's on Churchill Road.
I mean, yeah, the Baton Club, what's that called?
Yeah.
That's fine, I get
Didn't
that.
we take that out?
We had intended to complete Charles Kane. That was the intent.
Mount Wirral, we did 3/4 of it, and that's a child's playground. I mean, that should actually put in there.
It is.
It is.
It's in the notes.
But
So,
this is Broome Road Reserve, and we're just looking at replacing firm time fencing with bollards to match existing. I would have thought, seeing that there's a playground, that we would be wanting to make this, a decent safe fencing instead of just bollard, because kids can run through bollard. So,
I've never had a complaint from any parents and kids in the nation at that one reasonably often. It's not a high volume of traffic and the program's towards the back. Like on McGuinness Street, the program's right up hard on McGuinness. I mean, if you've heard something, then I'll take it on board, but I've seen parents, kids, and no issues on that one.
It's little on
but I thought that we were going to be looking at our playgrounds and where there are.
Yeah.
And particularly also where if there are like dogs being walked and like that, but we you can have a safe area with the kids and they're not allowed to run up. You try and catch a kid run out to Broome Road, particularly where there's vegetation and that curve.
Well, we all did it because we were vigilant with our children, Christina, so...
My mum used to let me
Well,
go.
not if you've got grandparents.
Can't get in none of it.
Anyway, I just think instead of having bollards, we should be looking at having real proper
So,
It's very easy though, that the permafine, sorry, there's no fence around that playground. There are bollards for some of the side of it because older kids are driving on it and doing donuts on the grass. So some of it is new plastic bollards and some of it is still the old permafine. So I support this. And we're only debating side not because it's in or out, but because we want to know where you're spending the money. And so I support the permafine going and the bollards going in. I mean, I'm happy to discuss whether we do extra work on the playground fence, but I haven't heard a complaint. And between that playground and Bourne Road, there is a retaining wall and a big garden bed right up against the road. So it's different to other playgrounds. But I'm happy to have that discussion, particularly because you've got a lot of replace existings here where there are already fences on Rattler Reserve and Stan Watson, Percy Street. So just talk to us about why you want to use this up to replace fences. What's wrong with the fences that you can need replacing?
Well, I believe there's missing portions of it, and they've reached end of life, and we're going through a process of replacing them. So that was the list of items that were given by my officers, which were identified to an order.
I think Bruce was next. Sorry, Christine.
Yeah, but you said Nana Werrell was in here. Where is it? I can't.
Sorry, is it?
Couldn't read it.
Sorry?
They call it Prospect
Garden.
Gardens.
The first one.
They usually make a mistake. Well, you were reading it correctly.
Okay, Christina.
Oh, yes. In the a few years ago, I remember Rattler Reserve and Stan Watson Reserve on the fencing, and that to be having some like artworks or some interactive like fencing play systems to make them a bit more, interesting and that. So it just looks like we just money just like replacing because they're broken, whereby perhaps we could be doing something a little bit more imaginative.
So maybe the issue of fencing needs more consideration, perhaps. So is that the view?
Yeah.
Monica, then.
Just on fencing of playgrounds, I get your point, Christina, about grandparents. But we are looking at, like I've been reading lots of stuff about playgrounds because we are looking at questioning our school and just interest in natural play for children. And fences restrict how kids play and they restrict imagination. So there's a suggestion that you don't go to fencing off playgrounds, but you go to ways of natural barriers to make it attractive for kids to stay in, or other ways to stop them from getting out. So, maybe we could look into that. Instead of pouring money into fencing, look at ways that we embellish our playgrounds and not necessarily fence them in.
Alan.
Yeah, perhaps we put blue-heeler dogs on leads.
Perhaps we do, Alan. That would be a difference, wouldn't it?
Because Bruce raised the thing, the Prospect Gardens one, is replace old fence around the soccer oval. The fence around the soccer oval, I think you can see it in there, but that wasn't why I took it, is that imitation green wood. It's plastic, recycled plastic. We've got front page of about 4 papers when we put that up. And for children, very, very seldom children are playing in that side. It is only the older tiddlers kicking the ball and stuff like that. But if we were looking at doing that and not the tree, I'll be looking at putting the fence down where the other thing is, taking them board, or at least running a blue-heeler dog or something. But that fence is there now for one of them. It's only to stop the kids from driving cars on there. It wasn't to stop anyone getting in. The kids used to go on in and do the wheelies and stuff like that. So it was Kate Piper when we were here. We went down to that, and it's worked because the kids don't get in. They get in on the other part now, but they don't get in there. And if some people are looking at somewhere else,
So look, this list was compiled by officers. They've gone out and identified areas that need replacement, renewal, whatever that might be, new bits put in where the proximity of the road is close to the playground, whatever that might be. So they've used their judgment come up with this list. If the elected members are not completely satisfied with that list, we can provide some further information, if you like, and we can actually detail each location where it's been replaced or renewed or whatever that might be. So this is a long-term list. Some of these are not new. These have been raised some years ago, but we have cut it from the budget on many occasions, and we did focus over the last couple of years purely on Cane Reserve. So I'm more than happy to bring back, this is through our officers going out and visiting the site and identifying areas of need.
Okay, thanks for that.
It just appears to me that because we've got an election, we want to put things in that's visible to the ratepayers. Things like this, which I think is surely needed, the same as the solar panels. This is needed, well, as Greg said, staff are taking time to go out, look at what we actually need to replace them and fixing up and that. I think it should be left in. I mean, how many years have we've been neglecting our playground fences and that? It looks like, by the looks of this, for years and years and years.
I don't understand. You're saying no one's arguing to be taken out.
So I'm for leaving the money in, and
It's really about if elected members want more information.
So-
Then I think the dollars.
I'm happy.
No, it goes to be really clear. No one in Ryman asked for this to be taken out or contemplates being taken out. We just want to know what fences. What it seems to me to reveal is that there's a list from the staff here which I don't know is a complete match with our aspirations. Several councillors have spoken about all our playgrounds need to be fenced. No, there's a lot that replace existing fences. So it might be good, I think, for you to come back to us with a bit of an audit. It won't take long.
Yep.
I'll review around and take some photos. Make a note what playgrounds aren't fenced, what playgrounds aren't fenced completely, because we had some that were done 3 sides and not 4 sides for some reason. Right? And come back to us with that, so that we can see whether we want to finish those fences or whether we want to put a whole new fence around for all.
Yeah, there's a bit of a divide, so we need to agree.
Whether we want to replace fences that are perfectly good other than the paint's coming off. I mean, that's because I fixed the gate at Ratley Reserve, a few weeks ago, and all it needed was just a bit of care and attention. It works fine. It doesn't look the best. It needs a paint job, but I didn't see what was wrong with the fence. So you should take some photos and show us why we want to repair or rip it down and do it again. It's not a big. I mean, Mark, it's not a biggest budget line in the budget, but we have said several times, if we've got a playground fence 3 sides wide and fence 4, I don't know, none of these items seem to refer to that. I think it's worth coming back to us with it.
So leave the funds in?
Leave the funds in and come back more specifically around playgrounds.
It's not having spoken on it. The parklands, which I used to live right alongside, on the other side of town, this mighty expensive chock-a-block full of people every evening, weekends. Total meterage of fencing? 0. Not a fence anywhere.
That's not true.
So on the side of the fencing?
The Aquatic Centre playground is fully fenced. The closest playground to us in the parklands
I thought
is fully
that
fenced.
wasn't obviously clear enough when I said on the south side where I lived, there isn't a fence for kilometres. There is one here that is in North Adelaide.
Can't go after they started.
Oh, yeah. Never thought I'd have to doubt you, sir, but I disagree with that.
Why?
Have you ever run there in the night time? They have 3 strands of wire that goes around 3/4 of down on Green Hill Road coming through. You go where they've got tennis courts, you go to fences, you go with the bumper thing on your push bikes. No
North
fencing.
Adelaide.
No. On the
Not on Green
other
Hill,
side,
not on Green Hill Road.
southern side, you said.
Yeah, but not Green, not yeah.
Just anyway, I want to interrupt it. We've got some really big items to discuss, so we've got to move on. Sorry.
I wouldn't spend a
The last one on this slide is about the irrigation and planting. There's 2 parts to this particular project. It's 200,000. The first part was, the question was asked, where are they being planted? The second part of that is more of the accounting part of that. Is at the moment we're treating them as capital, but the correct analysis or costing is yet to be provided to the auditor to look at whether are there any components that needs to go to the operating. So that is the locations that's provided about revegetation and irrigation.
So now this is just a list of the parks that we'll be addressing. Behind this document is basically a specification of how many trees are going in, what planting is going in, etc., irrigation.
Just a quick question. As a consequence of something I heard on the radio today and something I heard the other day, when is our planting season?
It's roughly between June and September, depending on the species of plants, depending on moisture content in the soil and the types of irrigation. But generally, it's in that.
Those guys on ABC on Saturday and Sunday, they reckon the best time of all is April, May, because it's still warm.
Really?
They've got a real kick-off going, because come June, it's got colder. The soil below ground has got colder, so they tend to stagnate. They said get them in April, May, the soil is still warm, gives them a kick along, give them some fertiliser, and off they go.
Yeah, it's really good for you.
Oh no, it's our bloody trees.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just about the most costly thing in the community.
Exactly.
I disagree, but we've got
All right. So we're going to finish off with this particular slide, the southern end of Churchill Road, which we will present to you as part of the PAC presentation. Okay. All right, so we conclude this part of it. Now we are moving on to, so that's costing. Staff will ask to provide costing about PLEC and about the southern end of Churchill Road. So there's two costing for PLEC. Great. The first part is PLEC finished in 3 years consecutive, and the other scenario, if we quickly just flip it to show you PLEC contribution finished in 4 years.
In part payment, so over 2 financial years. Yeah.
Over 4 financial years instead of 3 financial years.
Yes.
So if we look at scenario 1, so the total cost now is 4 million. Greg, do you want to?
That's great, yeah. 4 million. So what we've done is we've gone back to the drawing board and had a look at of using a more standard type paver, standard approach, very different streetscape to Prospect Road as part of the master plan process that we've talked about. It will have a more similar look to what we've got out at Churchill Road and what we've got in the beginning of Prospect Road. That's really what it's based on. It's a real standard type paver, standard type curbing, standard trees, minimal landscaping, no artwork, some furniture, street furniture. That's about it. That's what you're going to get. So that's what we've come up with, which is a significant decrease in price. Compared to what we had last week. And also, this also includes some shape correction. For example, catering for the crossfall on footpaths. So it might be a combination of altering the verge and also shaping the road at the gutter. So then we're not left with 200mm curb or whatever that might be, or very steep footpaths. So that's been included in this costing also. Okay?
Well, Bruce is first.
How much was it taken? About 4 million?
It was about 3.6. Yeah, the first stage, that is, yeah.
Okay, any thoughts on?
Yeah, I just want to fully understand where I'm at in this. So in the first one, the first section, which is down to St John's or somewhere?
Down to Gordon Road, approximately. Yep.
$560,000 is our PLEC.
Yes.
1.2 million.
Yes. Gives you from Olive to Gordon, footpath. Yes. Yep. Footpath. It will give you curbing. It will give you some shape correction if required. It will give you some trees. It will give you some low ground plantings around corners.
And distance is
about 600 metres.
What's the distance for Churchill Road, that last stretch of Churchill?
Now, there's a difference, and don't apply the exact same one. I know where you're headed, right? The issue is a hell of a difference. There's an issue here.
230 metres.
Yeah.
So it's about just a bit over half that first item.
Yes, but let me just clarify why there's a discrepancy. That bit between Olive Street and Gordon is made up of a fair amount of vault-type Telstra pits. they are very costly to adjust. And some of them, unfortunately, exist near corners. And we had that same issue along Prospect Road, and they cost a pretty penny.
70 grand each.
Well, about 30 grand each. Yeah, 30 grand. So there's a fair few purely on the western side, none on the eastern side, believe it or not.
Can I just clarify on this one? Sorry, the capital cost actually includes the adjustment of Telstra PIP.
It does, absolutely.
So we had an issue. We had an issue a few years ago. So we need to really know what is the Telstra PIP cost, because that may not be able to capitalize.
No, and so yeah, we did have that discussion that how do we extinguish the asset, or basically what does it mean as far as capitalisation, especially when it's not our infrastructure. So that's something that we need to consider down the track.
And nothing stops us borrowing all of this.
No, and I guess if we go to the long-term financial plan and what that means, if we go right to the bottom, 3 years out of the 9 years will be in deficit. It's as easy as that.
So this long-term plan includes additional depreciation, borrowing, and also maintenance costs.
Yes. So maintenance costs are just a standard figure that we've put in.
These figures here include only borrowing the 1.2, not borrowing the 560.
This figure, but not 1.2 plus 560.
That's all borrowing.
That's the lot.
The whole project has to be borrowing. So you can see the 9,000 is discontinued. So 9,000 is our starting figure. So this is the new long-term. So we have now put all our figures into the long-term financial plan, and this is what it shows. So after taking into account of all the operating costs, we have 3 years out of the 9 in deficit. Oh, yes, or it will be 3 years out of 10 in deficit.
Okay, and well, I guess we need to talk also about the next proposal. They're very similar. It's just about that PLEC is open for us to pay that amount, which is 560 over 2 financial years. And we modelled that. That's just for stage 1, and then we've basically modelled that for all other stages as well. So I really want to just show you, what that would have, how that would impact our long-term financial plan.
Well, if that's the case, though, if it's over 2 years, then there has to be. You can't be doing these running together. There must be a.
Well, you still build them within the calendar year. So it's a matter of. Let me try to simplify. You pay them on June 30, and then you pay them again 1st of July. Yep. So.
We have to say, can we physically do the PLEC works and let them finish and get out of the way, and then come and do the curb and gutter and footpath works all within 1 financial year?
Yep. It's 600 metres for the first stage. I'm absolutely sure we can do it. We've done it on other projects. We've done it in the past.
Yep. Yeah, but we don't. I don't have a problem with doing the curb and gutter. We can manage that.
Yep.
But it's getting PLEC out of the way. Because otherwise you've got the trenches left, right, and you can't run your curbs through.
Well, the thing is it's good project management. It's getting them in, getting them all undergrounded, all the lead-ins done. It'll be a rubble mess, and then it's us getting our contractors in to do the curbing, shape correction, footpaths, tree planting, etc. So it can be done within a calendar year if you coordinate it right. Monica.
Jenny, we have to borrow this money regardless, don't we?
Yes, that's right.
So if we borrowed the entire $4 million up front and just said, guys,
5.6.
it's 5.6.
It will be the PLEC.
Oh, yeah. So we just borrow the entire 5.6 at once and say, just do the whole thing, and it's just a rolling process. Does that affect that?
So it will still affect that, definitely.
But
the long-term plan means the operating cost at the very first operating cost will bump up by about probably $300,000. $1 million is roughly about 100,000 TNI. So that operating cost will bump up. It will still be probably 4 out of 9 that is in deficit. It will still be a very similar scenario.
so it'll be more, but not drastically more.
We are paying more in interest. So because if we borrow everything up front, we'll pay additional
If we say to them,
$1 million of interest a year earlier, and then
So, but if we say to them, just do it, and then each year re-borrow,
Yep.
it's that.
That's right. It's very similar. Yes.
And it leaves it,
Yeah.
it leaves it a bit open. But look, PLEC would love that because, you know, basically we've committed for the whole length, and that's what they want. But if you do it year by year, you might want to skip a year, depending on what's on.
Just to answer your question.
No, they don't.
More of it is cash.
So what are you, 66.6%?
Yeah, I mean, two things work for us. A, interest rates currently are the lowest they're ever going to be. The bank held again today. And the other thing, the cost of doing the work
Is great.
is fantastic.
Definitely is.
And
Clearly.
no, it ain't going lower, it's going to go up.
And we've got PLEC at a good time too. Quite generous. Yep.
This will be the cheapest main road upgrade we've done out of
Ever. Yes. Yep.
Just clarify Monica's question again. So if we were to bring everything up front based on this particular model, which means now we have 3 out of 9 year deficit, it will be 4 out of 9 year deficit because all our interest is up front. You see the 51,000, if we can just show this, the 51,000 surplus that we have in that 4th year. Yep, that will turn into a deficit because of all the interest up front. So it will still about 3-4 year deficit.
So if we still commit to just doing it and just make it a rolling process, but we don't borrow the money all at once, we borrow in increments.
Yeah. We reduce our interest repayment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we only borrow, it depends on council's, I guess.
So let's just say, for argument's sake, that's what we did.
To borrow everything up front. It definitely will cost us more. The interest repayment will definitely be more. Some we're not expecting to have it like year 2 or year 3 or year 4, but now we're paying that particular year extra.
I think it's important to understand that if we do these projects, they are affordable, but they don't comply with their financial indicators.
Correct.
Not irreparable. That means that at least for 3 years, our financial indicators say we need to have a surplus.
250. Yeah.
250 a year, roughly. And we're going to be going into deficit for at least 3 years, a significant deficit. But it can be justified in one way because there is a significant extraordinary project that you're doing. It's not just simply going into deficit because you're mismanaging anything.
Right.
And you need to be really conscious.
The timing.
That's right. So there are good reasons, but you need to be really conscious that if you go with this, that you are agreeing to not the financial indicator.
Let's ask Greg a question. So Greg, if we go for, let's agree to do the whole thing, and then we do Ginny's very clever borrowing process, can we sign up to PLEC and say, this is what we do this now, and this is the
We put in
that, so they
submission. Absolutely.
can't adjust it so it can't be more expensive 2 years later.
Well, there'll be the natural, look, if costs go up, labour rate or materials, you're going to have to allow some the rise and fall clauses within that contract, but they're minimal. They're minimal.
Fixed price, Greg.
Yes, but that would be very from the CEO right to them to say that we're going to commit for the entire project. Absolutely.
Is there any bargaining at all that can be done?
I haven't tried. I could.
So if we say let's just go for it, can you do some bargaining for it?
We can table that.
Okay, David.
Sorry, Jimmy, this one is over 3 years expenditure.
This one is, the only adjustment is just PLEC.
Sorry, can I just ask the question and you can answer it? You had another version,
Yep, that's the second version.
and this version flattens it out a little, but has a deficit over 4 years.
Great.
Okay, this to me seems more realistic, and this matches up with PLEC's view that they can have it take payment over 2 financial years. I'm a little cautious. I know we haven't got design drawings on this yet, so if we hit the go button, you can't actually commission a designer until the 1st of July. They're going to need 3 months to do their work, so we can't tender it until October, November. They won't start, that means, until December, maybe January. I'm not sure what PLEC movements are, but they're probably similar, probably similarly bound by budget years. I would have thought you could flatten it out a little more. Because what I don't want to see is a huge carryover of work we've approved next financial year but we can't achieve. we run a deficit because we've got a carryover. I'm in favour of doing this, but I want this modelled up really carefully because it affects. We just got to make sure. I know we can get it done, but you can't do curbs and gutters until the other clowns are away.
I completely agree that we can model this up a bit better. Yes, just to allow a bit of fat in between, just in case the stages don't happen. But carrying over capital is not, just correct me, finance team, if I'm wrong, that much of an issue if we need to. Is that correct?
I think is the mayor referring to the carrying over of the plaque cost?
Or any carryovers.
Carrying over of capital?
In the last 4 years, we've been hit by $500,000 or more of carryovers, and it just drives me insane. It just makes it so hard in your budget for 3 months to get to a zero or a surplus budget. The very first budget adjustments, you guys come and tell us about $500,000 problem.
That's operating, not.
It will only be the
Capital, some of it's, sorry, some of it's been capital, some of it's been operating.
So if we are looking at the operating result, on this sheet, it will only be column D, the plaque contribution. I still want to go back to this Telstra Pit thing, but I'll park that for now. It will be whatever we haven't paid plaque will be carried over according to this plan, because the rest will be capital. Carry over of capital does not affect operating.
So what happens with the interest and principal repayments we don't have to make because we haven't actually...
That's right. If we have not paid the plaque, we will not incur the interest. And you're right, so which means we'll have saving 1 year, yes, and then we will have to increase the expenditure.
Yeah. So there's minimum.
Worst case.
Yeah.
That's I understand.
There's no point. Say in year one, you've got 1.246 and 280,000 bucks. It's $1.5 million. You're not going to borrow the $1.5 million day one on 1st of July.
Not at all.
We're going to borrow when our cash runs out.
That's correct.
It's probably going to be, given the start of the project, it's probably not going to get substantially underway until January. We're not going to be paying a bill until February. We won't run out of cash until maybe May. So your first interest payment is going to be in May. Whereas you've got it all rolled up there into 2014-15. So, I mean, again, I'm in favour of it, but I think you need to do much more detailed modelling so we don't end up with a budget that's too far out of whack. You know, we should try and get it as close as we can reasonably get it. And we haven't spoken about Churchill Road yet, which is going to be on top of this. But if this can be flattened out, then our budget deficit here, 424,000, is less than we forecast it to be next year by starting this process next year. So I think we're better off, but I actually think it can be better again than that.
And am I right in thinking we currently have plaque in the operating budget, $560,000?
That's right. So if
not for 14-15.
Not for 14-15. What was your question? I'll just make it very clear before I answer that.
That was in the operating budget for...
It was at one stage. Remember we had that list of $939,000 worth of things? Plaque was half of it.
So we pulled it out. So it was listed, but we're advised at the start of that workshop that it had been pulled out of numbers.
So just to just to show that, so that particular year, this is pre-plaque. That particular year, this is per the long-term plan. We had a minor deficit, but because plaque is out, that's why we have a surplus now. Yep. So that explains that.
All right, so I think we've had a good discussion. Is it time now to maybe just run around the table just to see how you're supportive of this concept, and we need to do some more work. So we'll go.
Can I just be clear, sorry, on the flatten out comment? Is it flatten out of the capital works you're talking about, or the plaque, or the whole project?
This one has us paying for plaque over 2 financial years. I think that's reasonably achievable. But I'm not so sure that our timing can follow so closely that we would have paid all of our contractors their bills by the end of June 30. And you won't know that until you map it out in terms of costs and time frames. You can't lay the footpath until those Telstra vaults have been lifted. They are painful and time consuming because they're specialist contractors. So by the time you plot it all out, I'm sure you'll be lucky to spend half of that 1.2 in 14-15.
So Mayor, you're suggesting these three will be a year later?
Or more realistically?
They will, hang on, I can't answer all the questions, okay, but in the first year it won't start as quickly as that, so the interest and whatever payments won't be as much as that in the first year. There are two things that can then happen. One is Plec might say, yes, we'll give you a discount, but provided we do all of that, those 3 sections in one contract. So they might actually go through and do the whole thing inside 8 months, say. Then we go, well, we're going to take 3 years to patch up the roads and footpaths. And then Greg's going to come back and go, I'm a bit embarrassed now because 1 section looks great, 2 sections look terrible. Do you want to accelerate the projects? Okay? So you need to have a couple of conversations with Plec before you can model the rest of it.
That's right.
What I'm saying is the front end of it won't be as quick as that.
And look, really, what I really wanted to focus on today, and there was a lot of discomfort in past workshops around how it's going to impact the long-term financial plan. So we can detail it more, I totally agree, but I think what we need to flick to is if we go to if we do it all in 1 year, the previous scenario, you can see that the deficit is for 3 years, and then we're back to surplus. So to the long-term financial operating budget, we're better off doing it this way. And then we meet quickly our performance targets as far as accounting standards are concerned. So it's just food for thought. I'm saying we can do it any way. Look, if you're in the deficit for 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years, does it really matter if eventually you're going to get into meeting those indicators?
So that's the other one.
We have less interest.
Not much of it is.
The first one.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm happy for you to show us the modelling on that. I mean, I'm not against doing it quicker, but what I'm saying is you can't do it as quick as you want in the first year for reasons that we can't control.
I completely understand, but that was really what we were trying to say. What is the impact on how we schedule the works on the long-term plan? Yep.
I'm personally, if it's cheaper to do it quicker, well, you should tell us that.
Yes.
Remember the Church Road debate was one councillor said let's do it over 6 years, but it was clearly cheaper to do it under one contract, one tender, one lot of road works.
Present value, yep.
Right, so we did it in one.
There's a number of variations that we can come forward with, but I want to come back to the concept of actually doing this body of work and incorporating it into the budget. Do we have support around the table? It's not. I'll work from this end.
I'm in support, but we should always remember that we can still play with the operating result by looking at a road or 2 roads we might be doing in any of those years that we can just pull out and delay them. Could be there's $1 million sitting there alone. I don't know what's next in line, but we move it back a year or 2.
Well, and we're going to have a very robust discussion next workshop about our useful lives and how we're going to treat our infrastructure in the future and how do we stretch that buck and how do we treat different roads. So this goes hand in hand with this discussion. But back to Mark's point, in general, do we commit to this project? This is what we need to think about tonight.
I think, for me, councils long ago started the process of Plec, and I think councils probably sat on a bit longer than they probably should. I think as much as you can, you should respect the work done by previous councils, and particularly when it's something like this, when suddenly it just stops dead in the middle of wherever. I think to get it done now, while interest rates are incredibly low, cash rates 2.5%, we're never going to see that again, probably, and the cost of works is just the lowest they've been for ever and a day. So ratepayer-wise, it's in their advantage for us to bowl this over. It's work that's got to be done. Prospect Road has got to be done, and Churchill Road, well, can't leave that either, I would think. So I'm in favour.
Monica?
Well, it's a perfect storm, isn't it, at the moment? And if we don't do it now, then the cost of the ratepayer gets more expensive. So while there's a bit of pain for a little while and see the rate revenue, that's how much we're going to possibly increase rates to achieve this.
For the long-term plan.
A little bit of pain. As a ratepayer, if I wasn't sitting here, I'd be wondering why you aren't doing it when it's the perfect time to do it. So you guys work out the modelling and do what you need to do, but I think we should commit to this, but get as much as you can out of it.
Yep.
I was breezing along until Ashley opened his mouth and said, we could skip a couple of roads and that. I think our roads are getting worse and worse, not better. So
It's
that
optional.
frightens me a bit. Yeah, but you live on Prospect Road. I
Look, and I'm not, the discussion that I'm going to have next week is not about skipping roads. It's really maximising what we've got. We're not going to be asking for any more money in that space. So, yep, if that helps. Yep.
It is. I'm inclined to go with other people. If they feel it should be done, people around the table, I'll go along with it. But, you know, some of the best roads I go in Melbourne and Sydney that are trendy, where people sit around drinking their lattes and all this stuff, all have telegraph poles all the way down them and wires hanging everywhere and all that. So nothing bad about a telegraph thing, but I'll flow with the people. That's sort of how I see it. And you've sort of taken away Ashley's little knife and his cutting tool. So that would have been a real fear for me of that, you know. So I'm going to flow with people at the moment and go along with this one.
Okay. David?
I've said plenty. I agree with Alan and Greg that I don't think we should cut our other capital program. We've got plenty to munch on. How it's done, but stop it. This has, every time we've done work on a main road, we've had a terrific response and investment that's followed on it. This is a good introduction to our strategic plan, and pretty soon we're going to be embarrassed because the whole north of Prospect Road is done and looking way better than ours. This is the Prospect Road we're talking about. There's a number of problems with the footpath, crossballs and curbs and gutters, which are just going to create more and more problems for us. And we just need someone to go for a sconner on it. We'll be trying to get in there earlier than even this to fix it. So the west side's not too bad, but the east side, there's some real problems there. This will fix it.
Sure.
Yes, I think, you know, I'm also lined up for this one. It's fulfilled Prospect Master Plan, it's already consulted on and sort of tactically agreed, I think, with the community. And I don't think we're going to get another better deal, particularly in the coming financial, next few years. So I think let's do it.
Okay, good.
No, I'm okay. So in fact, I mean, the scenario where people are saying, oh, it's never been so better option to do it because it's so cheap because of interest rates. The same can be said if we pull, I mean, we've already delayed by about 4 years to pass roads because of the spending of the money on Prospect Road 4 years ago. And I think actually $750,000 in our budget, and actually said it's $1.5 million, which I'd like to clarify, it was $1.5 million in that budget. Same can be said for finishing off roads and footpaths and Prospect. If we pull that ahead, it's never been so cheap interest rates and never been a better time to redo, to finish off roads and footpaths that were delayed because of Prospect Road prior. Same can be said for that let's do the roads and footpaths that need doing in Prospect.
What roads did we delay to?
We delayed footpaths and roads in the previous budget.
We suspended capital works for 2 years to make way for the master planning.
We've sped it up now.
We did. We increased spending. We increased the spending, and we increased the budget consecutive years to catch up.
Well, what roads have we cancelled?
Well, it's in our long-term plan.
We haven't said we complete 10
In a shorter period of time.
But we haven't caught up. So the scenario of and relying on some of your point that it's never been so time, it's never been so cheap. Same can we said about pulling our roads ahead or fixing the roads that we delayed. It's never been a better time to do that either. So let's do the roads instead of Fleck. Or, because we Ashley wants to look at Churchill Road, and good idea. But we can't do that and Churchill Road.
Well, that's a key point. Before we move on, so I get your point. There's a general consensus that we should be progressing this project. So we will factor that in, and you can debate at the council meeting proper. That's where the decision is made. So I get that. So now we need to move on to Churchill Road.
Can I say my consensus is I'm holding until we go through Churchill Road because that's part of my consensus arrangement. So
sure. So Churchill Road, you'll see the figures slightly increased because we've allowed for project management and backfilling arrangements, if possible, if internal officers will take on that project. So it's gone up a little bit compared to the previous budget bid, I believe. Here we've applied exactly the same methodology about what we need to borrow, the capital cost, and what the additional ongoing maintenance will be, the depreciation that will hit our operating, and so forth. So interest, repayments, etc. And this is how it impacts our long-term financial plan. If we only consider Churchill Road, we're talking about a deficit for only 1 year out of those 9 years, where we go back to our key indicators as far as accounting.
Just a question, Greg. Is that combining?
No.
That's Churchill.
Just, let's start off. This is purely Churchill Road only, not doing Pleck or Prospect Road.
Okay. What scenario if we do both? What is it?
We will have it in a minute.
Good question. To the next slide. Yep.
So this is scenario 1 plus
This
Churchill.
is scenario 1 plus Churchill.
So these are combined. So combined, we're talking about what we're going to push it out to is 4 years of deficit in that 9-year period.
Which we were going to do anyway, 4 years of
If we go to scenario 2, which is the consensus scenario of
the deficit's increase, right?
Yeah, the actual figures within each year, it's increased. Is that correct, Chris? So each year it's a slight increase, still in deficit, but the same period of time.
The fourth year's gone from 21,000 in the black to 364 in the red.
the 4th year,
Yeah, from 618 to
618 to 364. Correct. This is with both.
It is both. So with this proposal, we're talking about completing the southern end of Churchill Road and doing basically one stage or all stages of Pleck, all 3.
We explore any grant income?
Not at this stage. But
Sorry.
we can.
Sorry, Greg. Is this to do all of Churchill Road in the next financial year?
Yes, this is to do Churchill Road from, is it Allen Street to Avenue or? Yep. Roughly.
So what's the, sorry.
Allen to Avenue.
Yeah.
It's a little bit further on the west side.
Yes, slightly.
You have to think, though, this has got to be, they really owe us, the state government, on...
So look, some of the discussions, just to say, it's not, that's one side of it, I guess. If we can get that funding, we haven't based it on that. This is worst case scenario. The other discussions I've had is with the DPTI, the department, about what they would do for us as far as reseal, and they're very open and committed over the phone. There hasn't been formal correspondence that they will escalate the reseal program to fit in line with this capital expenditure.
To the cleaner.
No. Yep. So what they're saying is that if we commit to this sort of capital and Plex on board, and we commit to finishing Churchill Road, they'll reseal the road also.
Because you know one of the real heavies used to have your job.
Yes. Yeah. Paul Goldsmith.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we need to discuss what level of support there is for Churchill Road for the project as well.
Oh, look at Churchill Road as long as we leave Pleck out.
You'd be supportive
of doing it. Yep. And possibly some other roads and footpaths that have been put off because of Prospect Road, dancing up Prospect Road and everything got up clarification on the deficit. But actually was just joking.
No, I wouldn't do that.
That's been reported to council. It's been reported to council. Yeah, okay, so you generally support?
Yes.
Ms. Stern?
Support doing both.
Oh, I'm only supporting doing one.
I got that. David?
I support doing both, but I wonder strategically whether we're better off putting in 50% of the money for Churchill Road and going to government saying our half's ready to go. You put the other half in, just do it together. We put it all in our budget. It's a bit harder to have that discussion.
Sorry, Jenny, can you go back to just Churchill Road?
You can actually check our budget.
Yeah. Well, it's not hard. It's a transparent public document. Send an officer to level 3 to go and find it on the internet.
So can I just ask a question?
Last time by not doing it that way, so...
No, we had the funding first before we put it up. try and take $1 million from them before we structured our finance. So I'm in favour of doing both, because I think we could be a bit more strategic about Churchill Road, places for people money, because there's a dialogue there where they haven't contributed at all to Churchill Road. They put a lot of money into Prospect Road. The bits we're doing going north are not really places for people eligible, I don't think. But I think Churchill Road, we could probably push them a bit hard.
We did get some money for Churchill Road for the crossings.
Yeah, Churchill Road crossings and also Reese as far as hard infrastructure. This is worst case scenario. What you need to think about is we can't afford it. Worst case scenario. Owen.
Yep, good idea. I'll most probably both in my head. Might take Jenny up to Perry with me tomorrow, and the other questions I want to ask, I'll ask her as we're going along, and we can read while I'm driving. I can do both those things at once. I'll come and see you, because there's things in there I don't understand.
Definitely.
I can't see and go away, and I don't want to waste everyone else's time. The top end of Churchill Road has to be done. If there was a priority to me, that would be it. Because 1, 2, 3 or 4 of you here from previous council and a couple of staff, and that the job you done at Churchill Road has to be finished, because it was a good job, so it has to be finished. So that in my head is even more important than the other one. Not putting that down, but more important to tidy up something, to finish it off.
Well, and on that point, Alan, the difference with Churchill Road, we've got construction plans ready to go.
Yeah.
So they've been surveyed, it's all ready. It's ready to go.
That could start after you tender, maybe September.
Exactly.
Okay, so general support. Yeah. Okay, Monica? Right? Ashley?
Yes, for both. I think it's worth commenting though. There can be, in fact, and I fell into the trap myself thinking about this, because you think, Fleck, why the hell do we have to, why doesn't the state government do it? But it's not as though Prospect Road doesn't need the work anyway. I mean, you go down, especially on the east side of Prospect Road, it is just third world, well, second world. It's pretty gross. So if you're going to do it anyway, you might as well just buy it. Because once you get out of the main path here, I mean, Prospect Road goes downhill more ways than one. So, but yes, I'm all for it, and I think the key is to work magic and get grant funding. And it's got to be a lay-down reserve of grant funding.
Asking for the northern end to be done because this is a big expense. But is there any movement on 250 Churchill Road? Because I remember when we voted for Churchill Road, my thought was wait till something's built there and then talk to the developer about matching the footpath and stuff. But is there any movement on that, do we know?
David and I met with the developer today, or the property owner today, and it seems frustrating this slide. I'm not that optimistic. I don't know whether you are, David, for those discussions.
I'm normally a pretty optimistic bloke.
They're on Chinese time.
I'm just curious about, so if we do the top end, do the south end, the north end, I don't think we should touch that until something's finished at 250
the current rate of progress, we won't be spending any money on Northern Churchill Road for 5 years. So we don't need to worry about it in these next 4 years.
Oh,
You can't see it. Either they'll be taking their time, doing nothing, or they'll start work and make a real mess of Churchill Road in the process.
Yeah, that's why we shouldn't do anything.
In which case we won't be doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And we'll do it when they're finished. So I think the best case is 3 years, probably more like 5 years.
No, that's okay. I was just curious as to when we should start consider that.
Okay, look, I think we've probably got to some conclusion there. The next item we're going to be discussing is the rate model.
Just very quickly, a couple of slides with rates. There are information that's sought by elected members.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, so I'll just start off with it. If you haven't seen this week's Messenger, there's an article in there that's actually got a good comparison. It's thankful to Curtis for doing my homework for me. He's actually and those indicative figures. obviously,
usually accurate though.
No.
that's right.
No. On prospects, we just need to make a note that Curtis has not contacted either of us for those sort of.
Here last week for our discussion.
Okay, just to give you an indication, if you haven't seen the messenger, I'm sure you'll see it in the next few days.
So we're sitting more at the residential rate at around 4.2.
Yeah. Yep.
We're sitting low fours. We'll talk about
We'll talk about effect
in a
life,
second.
yeah.
That is over. That says 4.5 to 5.
Correct.
Exactly.
That's correct. That is what was reported in the messenger.
I think
Yep.
what's going to happen is the community is going to see that and they're going to get some welcome news. And so.
Mind you, depending on tonight.
Yeah, that's right. Not if we did it flat that way.
So after last week's workshop, we went away. It seemed to be a general consensus around option E and option G as being preferred options. I've dropped the other models off. They said they weren't preferred. Councillor Groot suggested a model H, where we capped the residential increase at 4% and then passed the rest of the growth on to commercial. I've also prepared a model I, which is middle ground. So it's 4.2 increase, whereas previously we were talking about 4.4. So what that actually looks like is this. So as I mentioned before, E and G is what we talked about previously. If we were to go with the 4% increase on residential, it would make 8.79 for our commercial area, whereas the 4.2 would only be 7.87.
So option H was Councillor Groot's suggestion. What if residential is 4? What does that mean? So that means commercial is 8 point, close to 8.8, close to 9%. So that's why option I.
You're already slow.
Yeah.
So that's why option I is invented for a middle ground.
I think you should just do the whole alphabet, Ginny.
So that is just to see what does that mean if we come back a little bit, basically increase the residential by 0.2. What does that mean to commercial? That dropped to 7 point. It's still close to 8. So I guess direction is actually sought tonight so that we can frame in our annual business plan the ranges.
G.
You go around the table. Monica, anything?
Can you keep just pass me for a bit?
Anyone else prepared to comment?
Sort of make sense of the figures.
I'm more comfortable with G because it puts a 6 on the commercial rate.
Yeah.
It's only double the inflation rate, not some other kind of number.
Don't kill the golden goose with growing our commercial.
So the difference, between G and I is 0.22% to resi, but for commercial it's 1.1%. That's a big difference to them. I'm happy that they pay more because we're working on the main roads. We can sell that story, but only sell it to a certain extent.
I'm happy with G now.
G?
Yeah.
Mr.
G.
Monica?
Like,
Say G.
let me think. No, if we're going to start, not that there's a lot of business activity north, but if we're going to start ripping off roads, we want to, stop pushing the blow a little bit, I suppose. So we'll start crying that we're destroying their business. So,
G?
Yeah.
All right.
Just that I listened brother ears and commercial people said on the 7, the 6, all that. But to me, one of the ways of building is a commercial empty land. It should be 3,000%, and they should start building on it the week after they buy it. Because you just look around, even apartments that now have been okayed by Channel 2. The people we got excited about opposite Scottish Corner, the people you just met with, all those sort of things. Yeah. And if they cost them a fortune to have dirt doing nothing, anything, one would say, I don't know. So that vacant commercial land's down to 10, and I think it fits into a whole pattern, so you can't change the income.
No, it's on top of 25%.
Yeah.
It's 25% above commercial plus that. Yeah. So it's huge.
25% above
commercial.
the vacant land.
of commercial, which is already way above residential, and then it's 10% on top of that.
So what we do, as the rough skeleton that we introduced last year was that we took the rate in the dollar that applies to residential or commercial, and we're applying a 25% loading directly onto that rate in the dollar and apply that to the vacant land. I'll very cautiously say that we could look to change that 25% and make it 30% or something like that. That was obviously your figure that you came up with, 25%.
Look, I don't want to be rude, but I understood what people went. I just thought I'd get a little shillings worth in and say that, you know, when you see, and it's the same, it comes from my job too in the city, and that you see Chinese people come here and buy big blocks of land and do nothing, or you see the bloody bloke in North Adelaide with a block of land that's,
He's not Chinese, isn't it?
He's Greek.
and in North Adelaide. There's difference between Greeks and Greek developers. They're two different people. And so you get there, they are. And you know, and you get these people that have empty blocks of land and because they can afford to sit there, but everything else misses out around it and all that stuff. So, and I do understand how you've done the 25. So but I was just saying the 2 months worth that, you know, about 2 weeks to start working.
Christina, then Bruce.
How much then is 252 Churchill Road, Cotton?
250.
5 commercial properties together was $104,000 last year.
The vacant.
I need
That's the extra.
no, that was, oh, you're sorry, no, you're right.
That's the extra.
How much, you're saying, what rates are they paying? So, for that 5 hectares? It's worth about 12 million bucks, is it? Oh no, what the Value of General put it down under 9 million.
All 5 commercial vacant land properties this year contributed $111,000.
Okay.
Scenarios for 5 properties would go up to
G is 122.
So she's probably paying half of that.
I could get the individual properties if you
Might
wish.
be worth just emailing that out.
Tender of
We need to move on. Bruce.
I was going to ask the same question you just out.
We can-
Those people came to us last Thursday, proposed to agree to it. It's been set on for 8 years.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And the amount of money it's costing to fix up that land as well. Plus, a lot, yeah. I mean, we've gone out backwards to try and help those people.
I know.
Develop it. I mean,
David.
I think we should buy it.
The conversation today revolved around it saying that she's actually taking out a mortgage to pay her land tax at her rates.
Oh, crying.
Oh, I didn't give her a hanky.
But that's all business costs, though, isn't it?
However, she knows she's not getting any money off it, and any rating position you put on it, we've always got to be careful about how you justify a rating position on vacant land. Because our staff have got to take a phone call. But if you can show us where other councils have a rate higher than 25%, and you can say we're just middle of the pack, I'm happy to consider a higher number. But I don't want us to be an outlier.
So what will happen after this is during the month of May and early June, we will show you the modeling as to how many percentages. That will be that sort of analysis. This is the big picture for us to go to the community. So we will get the analysis, and if there's a change in rating, we might have to reconsult.
Yeah.
But depending what is the change, how big is the change.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to take the phone call to those people on 250 Churchill Road and explain to them why we should wait.
Okay. All right, just one slide, very last slide, just to show you where we are. So what we're going to do tonight is we'll include Clegg, we'll include Churchill Road, and we'll know these are the rating. We'll take the report to Special Council on coming Tuesday. What that means that you won't get the annual business plan or the agenda until Monday. We do need quite a few days to rework basically the whole annual business plan. It's a special meeting of council. We try to aim for close of business that you will get your annual business plan on Monday.
There's no sneaky changes.
No, so the figures will be as it is. The annual business plan will include all the wording. So that is to go to public consultation. So the figure will be as what was presented.
You put in, sorry, Jenny, when you're putting it together, we've asked the team to do a lot of work around which fences and playgrounds and which roads get the garden upgrades. You actually put it into the business plan, so when people read it, they can see McGuinness and Colin Grove Avenue, and they can, the fences we might change, but they can at least see that there's some sort of tangible outputs out of it, and they go, oh yeah, that's my park, or that's my street, or the footpath program is in there.
All right, we'll try to incorporate as much from the responses to the, in one section of the annual business plan, there's a bit of a blurb about each project with a bit of blurb. We'll try to incorporate what we have provided you, but again, at a summary level.
Too to the media, they like to talk about stuff rather than numbers.
Yep.
You ever read about the article on Port that Infield's proposed rate increase? It talks about what people are going to get, not what they're going to be hit with, and I think we just need to help provide that dialogue.
Sure. Yep, we'll do that. So that's where we're at.
This is the budget will it would be predicated on an increase of 4.2.
For residential, it's 5.5 total revenue, but 4.42. So this is the headline stuff, the resi stuff, but the total, amount is still 5.5. So this is what we will communicate, is 4.4.
And this is only part of the equation. Surplus sitting at the moment, evaporated.
2,000.
So that is the deficit now?
Prior projects it was 2,000.
I think it was 2,000.
Now it's those other numbers.
That's right. So we will need, audit committee will.
So the next council discussion is going to be about what?
I think just on budget and also a couple of...
Apart from the budget?
For consultation. Only for consultation.
Okay, we'll finish on that part because we've got to move on to the other items.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
So, Chris, do you want to come forward? Deb, do you want to talk about the next one, which is the DAP panel members in terms of reference review?
For the loo, but I can't. I'm on the DAP.
No toilet break yet.
No toilet break yet.
Yeah, check that in and close everything. Maybe you do this.
You want to take a couple of minute break, Chris? Yeah, that'd be good. Okay, cheers.
Set the next one up as well.
I wonder.
I'm still plugging my $2 tickets for the
They're logged on the Chris.
I tried to squeeze it up. I will. Have to give me the money.
Touch base with don't sit here because I was not
catching up for...
Carolyn, do you want to sit here? I can stop with you for a minute. I'll need to just touch base with Chris right now.
Under your login too.
Haven't you got any money on you?
Okay.
David Ford Company.
I'm on a IOU. As well? Oh, no, not what you're going to do.
Does she ever want to go to Parliament? Chilling off of
Oh.
Yeah.
We'll try.
We should probably invite them.
Yeah, well, it should be out of the budget. Yeah. That BP taking station's cheaper than there. It's all in Australia before it starts.
They want to open it for, yeah, we won't show it all, but show a little bit of it.
Where's that?
Get it, I can just get it from the website and put it on board.
I noticed that. Yeah, exactly.
I think so. What's that? On the news up. I can catch that.
You just watched them fall.
Thank you. I don't understand.
We should take it out of your lap. What is it? Tell me, no cooking process.
If I asked him to do anything, he just gets angry. If you ask
Farm the house because they were buying it for it. So mate, he bought $200,000, his own money on it, made it straight. Yeah. And you know another one, but it's not a workshop, is it?
where did it go?
Interesting.
You weren't there.
Well, I probably got to see it. They went to pay for it. They were cooking weird. Been there 3 years.
Totally
Yeah. Yeah, generally the same.
You have what you want. What happened to your office? What?
Well, barely flight.
It's got a computer, have you? Laptop, hasn't it?
Not for the next week.
You get
Apparently
paid.
good for high school. Yeah. And I kind of thought, oh, council meeting, this, but it's year 11, what is research? Did you kids do the research project? Don't get it? So, 8 o'clock. Right, so probably be in college.
Do that for
Does
me?
that come in? Did it really come in after 8?
Sure.
Well, we got numbers for the council meeting.
Yeah. There's good support for the budget.
Yeah, consultation. I apologise for that.
Oh, yeah. Urine. Normally I keep it in a snake pen.
Wondered for 2 years what that jar is.
I will.
Getting down from low as you can. Oh, you do it.
Really.
Thinking of that when I was sitting over there. Come over here. Mindset. Geelong and Islandish.
What will we give them money?
Unless we stay later.
It's new.
Just a query. I'll just ask you guys, we've got a number of other items yet to get through. Are you prepared to stay later than 9?
Yeah.
You need to go home?
Yeah, for the one.
Yeah, 9:05. Yeah.
Yep. We've got a number of other items, so maybe if we aim for 9:30, could that work?
Yeah.
Yeah?
My wake is up when I'm driving.
If I'm struggling to be done by 9:30.
Okay.
Well, we've got staff here that have been sitting around.
Okay. So let's get moving. Depends how quick Chris rushes through this one.
Planning is always very quick. It's not as much fun as the budget. Over and done with. Term of membership for 2 of our independent members expires in June, so next month. They can keep operating on the panel for another 3 months beyond that, but it's timely to bring it to council and determine whether you want to reappoint those 2 members or whether we advertise and seek expressions of interest. So the 2 independent members are David Cook and Simon Wiedenhofer. They've both been on the panel since June of 2011. They're the 2 architects we have on the panel. One is a heritage architect by background, and the other one is more into that commercial architecture space. So is very familiar with the design review process by the government architect, and has been involved in the design and construction of multi-storey residential development. So certainly
fits well in terms of Council's current development plan and the level of activity and interest we've seen. So a report will come to the next meeting, but I was just wondering if anyone had any comments at this stage. I mean, they've been on the panel for 3 years now. Bruce.
Because it's election year, I don't reckon it should be our decision. They might want these people on board. Can that time frame be adjusted so that we not this time around because it's probably too late, but the 4 years time, maybe the 4 years be adjusted so that we don't actually make the vote, the vote is waited till the next council?
Council, I mean, there's always that potential. Council has previously resolved and included in the terms of reference that the appointment of independent members will be for a 2-year period, and that appointment will be staggered between the 4, so we have that continuity of service.
And I'm talking about instead of us making a decision.
In terms of
the next council, because it's a new council coming in.
Well, there's only a 3-month period in which they can continue to operate after their...
No, what I'm saying is, can we adjust the time frame instead of us in 4 years' time? Like, can it be adjusted so that the decision is made in December or whatever of 2018? Instead of us making the decision, because the next council mightn't be us. And they might like the decisions we've made for them.
Well,
we make a decision for them.
The same could be said about the budget discussion.
Of course.
Yeah.
Is that a 3-year appointment?
It's a 2-year appointment?
It's a 2-year appointment, so the next council will get an opportunity to make a decision
When
in 2 years' time.
In 2 years' time. So that's what I'm saying. We'll make a decision for 2 years.
The other 2 members will come up in 1 year, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're right, staggered.
Basically, every year in June, we'll get to have a look at 2 of the independent members.
Every year.
I just don't think we should be making a decision on behalf of our future council on that sort of thing.
They'll make a decision next June, and then they'll make a decision the following year for the next one.
That's only for a staggered part.
So the DAP is not for the council though. The DAP is an independent body, so it doesn't actually matter. It does matter.
We are electing those people.
Sorry? It's an independent body. It shouldn't be the next council may not want them. It's not about...
They might not want them. They might want someone different. Someone might want to make their own decisions about who they want on DAP.
One advantage, Bruce, to doing it this way is that if you do it in an election, you might suddenly you've got an entirely new DAP. Is that true?
Might not be either. Like we did. We said continue on when we moved to this council now. We said, like, let's keep the experience.
It actually makes a good point because the election might give rise to a whole new council who might want to change the 3 elected members. So if you said change the 3 elected members and 2 independents, you've got 5 out of the 7 are brand new. So you've got to lack it. But you still got 3
I don't agree with you.
4 independent.
7 altogether.
And one's the chair, so there's only one other.
The schedule's been in place for the last...
Yeah.
I'm happy.
As a council.
So the presiding member of DAP has been
8 years.
in 2007, so yes.
He's up next year, and he's not standing again. So.
Well, I think we've got currently one that's got the heritage expertise. We've got one that's got the design,
Activation of the space.
and one that's familiar with higher. What's the bigger projects.
Higher density, multi-storey.
And so that still gives a balance to the of what we've got. We've got on the panel, the 3 members, but in terms of the remainder. So one is still at the Sheree.
Yes. So Cherie's still there?
Yeah, all right. And who's the other?
Chair. David, the chair.
Alan's got this.
Mine was only, so two stand down for 2 more people or whatever. Are those 2 people that are come to their end, do they want to stand again? Are they willing to stand again?
They could still express an interest in continuing if council chose to advertise it more broadly, but yes, they are interested in continuing.
Well, my opinion then is, if the 3 people that have been on council, and I mightn't have the rules right here, so you can jump in, but be careful. Our 3 people that are on, that we've elected on, if they're happy with the performance of those people and what they're doing, I believe they should be asked if they want, if that's the case, asked if they want to continue doing it, and if they say then they offer. Huh? Is that not the right idea?
About $5,000.
No, it varies depending on how big you want to go with advertising. Last time we advertised for the position, which was October 2011, it was when Cherie Gill was appointed after the resignation of Paul Debb, that we advertised in the Advertiser to draw a wider pool rather than looking simply locally, and I think that cost a couple of $1,000. Bruce.
Why is it Mark finishes in August and both Ashley and Scott finish in October?
It was when the appointments were made to those positions. That was the limit in terms of the time frames.
Should we be extending that one too then? That expires in August.
They all get spilled at the election.
Yeah.
No, but August,
It's 2 months prior to the election, so you still got 2 months short.
oh, like September, October, no, we'll take them to the end of 3 months.
3 months after.
It'll get over the
But should we under due diligence advertise for those positions? The independent members expire.
We don't have to, and if they're satisfied with their performance.
If they have sort of got a confidence anywhere, or
Can we ask that question?
That's what, I mean, I'm assuming they haven't, but can we have some feedback from panel members about?
Well, that's
There's
the only
one
panel
here.
member here. For me, they've been absolutely excellent. They've been incredibly thorough. You know, you're always wary of people that just don't do their homework. They really do their homework well. They give exceptionally good advice. What I do like about them, though, and generally it's not the role of DAP to try and improve what's there, but by sort of chatting away, the number of times people have gone away, come back with a far better proposal because of the hints they've given. And then the chair has said, rather than toss it out, we'll give you the opportunity to go away, come back. And time after time after time, we've got really improved plans that better fit within where they are intended to sit. You need architects to do that. You know, we as amateurs, you just can't do it. You just don't have the understanding. They can look at these and really change the fenestration and all sorts of things in a subtle way that's made a big difference. Where I know, one of the people I know on the Adelaide Council said, no, they never ever talk about that. You know, it's yes or no. And I think the beauty of these guys is they're prepared to put forward, yeah, exactly, earn their keep, and they do. I think they do it well. And the other girl, what's her name? Cherie, again, just fabulous. Never, she's not up for grabs, but
So that sort of answers.
Monica was on DAP. I'd be interested both of them. I'd be interested to hear Monica's.
Yeah, they are hugely professional. The other thing that I value about them is that we've just gone into a new development plan. They really get it. They really understand it, and you know, we've got had some big ticket things on the table, and possibly some more coming up. And I think that they would just be really valuable in the contribution towards that. Not that it's important, but they know Prospect really well, and they know what will work and what won't work, I think. So that they're able to contribute to this is the vision. Not that they're there to do the vision, but that, you know, they just communicate ideas really well.
one of them is
David.
yeah.
All right. So to move this on, is everyone comfortable with what's been discussed?
Feedback sounds excellent. So,
Chris, do you need anything else?
The DAP terms of reference, we'll be taking it to the next DAP meeting just to fine-tune or polish some of the decision-making process, so it's a little clearer and a little more transparent in terms of the decisions that are made, because at the moment there appears to be some confusion in the community as to the recommendations that come up from staff and then the decisions that are subsequently made by the DAP, and how they go from that recommendation to the final decision and how clearly that is documented as part of the minutes. So that'll just be a discussion that we're having with the DAP, but I thought I'd bring it to your attention in this forum to see whether you had any feedback or concerns or had heard similar concerns from the community.
My only concern, as you know, whether it goes further, was that I felt some of our processes were a bit slack compared to council, classically the minutes. 2 or 3 other things that the rule for them was less than the rule for council. I mean, to me, the bottom standard should be what we do, and anything should be even more better governance. Now, the minutes sort of issue, it was all a bit, yeah, put a hand up, yeah, okay, that's all right. Which, for me, because I'm very governance-oriented, just didn't do it for me. And I really felt it could come back to haunt us one day in the Erd Court when, nobody really said what was okay or not.
So when working on a consensus model where there's just a general agreement around the table, and there may be some who disagree, and there's no calling of divisions, which I totally support. I think the decision of the panel should be the decision of the panel. But at the same time, there should be a vote held, motions moved, or motions moved and then a vote held, so that it's very clear as to what the panel is voting on. And for a committee meeting that typically doesn't go beyond half an hour, there's certainly scope to tighten up our recording of what occurs there.
Can I ask,
I agree.
the DAP had the same recording or video file recording?
No.
Is that under consideration?
No. I think there's, in the future, scope for council to determine whether or not it expands the use of this technology, but there are implications. We have had participation by a DAP member via teleconferencing before, so it may be useful in that manner. But in terms of broadcast to the general community, it could occur, but it could. It's a matter of seeing how this test goes.
It was only listening in, by the way. Wasn't participating. Had no vote.
Okay. So
Covered by our insurance, by the way. They covered under our officers' insurance. The independent members.
I'm not sure.
I believe so. I can check that.
We're talking about recording them so someone can, pick apart every word they've said about their development and sue them for some nasty comment.
Good reason not to use it.
They might say, hello, I'll just not come to your meetings anymore, thank you.
Yeah.
So just be careful about all that.
Well, that's what happened by President Gallery.
Yeah, it's a different league when there's a recording. We know we're public officers, we're elected as that, we've got insurance. That's what I know that, and they will want to know.
Double check.
If it's suggested, they will know that they're covered.
Is under professional indemnity, I'm pretty sure.
You can't go outside, Bruce, and start shouting at somebody. Yeah, you have to be so careful, though. I know sometimes I have almost said things.
Which brings us to briefly, if we had time, the complaints handling policy. I won't go into detail. A report will be coming up to council with some proposed revisions to the complaints handling policy. At the moment, it's geared very much towards referral to the local government governance panel, which sort of leaves the independent members of the DAP out in the wind as to how council or council's public officer, being the CEO, deals with complaints that are received about independent members on the panel. So the current policy that we have was based on the LGA model. There's a bit of a hole in it, so we're patching that hole to provide the opportunity for legal advisors other than the local government governance panel to provide advice to Council's public officer in determining complaints and making recommendations.
So you're saying the CEO would determine the complaint about a panel member?
The CEO will investigate and provide recommendations. Yes, I think it is the responsibility of the public officer to
investigate and conclude. I'd be happy with that, Mark.
Include ensuring the proper investigation.
Proper investigation of complaints, may also refer
to determination.
Sorry about this. Okay, so it is the presiding member of the presiding member of the DAP determines the complaint. The public officer may make recommendations to the presiding member. If it is a complaint about the presiding member, then the policy as it stands, currently the complaint will be referred to the LGGP. Given that our presiding member is an independent member of the DAP and not a council elected member, the LGGP won't consider any complaint against the presiding member.
With 8.3, so public officer, just the complaint as a separate one, the public officer must refer to the presiding member. So when you talk about referring it, you're not handing it over to the presiding member of that.
It is.
You must inform.
Who wraps the knuckles?
The presiding member does, in terms of making recommendations, public officer, or referral to the LGGP. If there's repeated concerns or complaints that are justified, then a report may be made to...
What is the mediation and education? Because it could be just an educational thing or a mediation thing. Where is that?
It's not mentioned in the policy.
In there?
Some good feedback.
It could be that elected members just uneducated about something or whatever, or same with an independent member.
Agree more.
Use education. Why should they have to go straight to theirs? As per our code of conduct, it used to go straight. I mean, it should be mediation and education.
So we've got some words. We've got some words in that new code that we can use for that.
I still haven't had an answer for that about referring. Does that mean that the presiding officer is just informed, or the public officer, if they receive a complaint, that was 8.3?
Chris is saying that he does it. Excellent. Presiding member acts on it.
And is that what happens to most other DAPs?
Yeah, it should happen in all DAPs. I just queried the arm's length sort of type of rule. I mean, you know, if everything's all going hunky-dory and, you know, you don't like to have a car and, oh, you know, they're all lovely people, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I think
you need some
I'd like the CEO involvement there, the referral to the CEO and the presiding member. Makes the decision.
That's how it works as a public officer. That's how it's written. The level 1 complaints are referred to the presiding member. Only the stuff listed in 8.1. If you have a look at those, they are of a minor nature. And I think that if you go up, Chris, you can. So 8.1. I think they are things of a nature. There you go, 8.2, sorry. that the presiding member can deal with.
I mean, failure to accept the presiding member's ruling, I mean, well, that's democratic. Why should you have to accept the ruling of a presiding member? It's something to be passionate about. You're not really being disrespectful, but your view is, your democratic view is, could be different to the presiding member.
But that could be a ruling in respect of meeting procedures rather than a determination in relation to an application.
I'm okay with that going to the presiding member to sort out those sort of things, right? But if you've got level 1 implies that there's a level 2, well, what are they? Because they might be the things that, yeah.
So they're more serious than level 1 complaints. They include possible breach of the Act that allege improper but not illegal behaviour. Legal being level 3. Improper use of council resources, harassment of council staff or other DAP members, or action contrary to the operating procedures outside of a DAP meeting. Contrary to a council policy, which I think is worth clarifying where applicable to the behaviour of a DAP member, just to clarify that.
So what's that action contrary to DAP operating procedures outside of DAP? What does that mean, Chris?
I can't think of a particular example off the top of my head that would be, given that
That's somewhere else.
well, that's the improper use. I guess the operating procedures do cover maintenance of confidentiality rather than the use of it.
Or going to the site, talking to the developer, the classic.
Or the neighbour.
I think, you know, I think Bruce makes a point that I hadn't really thought of. When you're giving somebody that position, we perhaps tend not to think that this is something they're going to have to do. In terms of the hiring process, I think it should be made clear to them that this is part of their job, that they will be involved, but also it has to be somebody that you feel can do that job.
Experience or that in a previous job or something.
I bet David Blakey has absolutely no idea that he might get this dumped on him and have to make a decision. It should be something, I would have thought, I'd probably go with Bruce and it should go to the CEO myself.
Well, both the CEO and the presiding member.
But, you know, you guys have got experience, you manage staff, you've been, you know, God knows how many years in the service. Somebody coming into the chair might never have employed somebody.
Well, hang on. Sorry, who processes level 2 complaints?
Level 2 complaints. They're referred to the LGGP or a legal advisor.
Either presiding officer.
By the public officer.
Doesn't say that.
Presiding member.
Where to say that, Chris?
In terms of level 2 complaints.
Yeah.
That is.
It says LGA goes to the legal advisor or the LGA.
May determine the complaint as substance.
Where does that originally go to?
So they're received by the public officer in the first instance and are then...
Who's the public officer?
CEO.
So level 2 goes to the CEO, sends it straight off to the LGGP or an independent legal advisor.
Yep.
They come back with their determination.
Their advice and recommendation.
But there again, Chris, I would like to see, instead of it going straight to the LGGP or an legal advisor, I'd like to see I'd like to say the public officer will determine whether it should go. I mean, the CEO, the public officer might say, well, actually, this is not a level 2, this is really a level 1. I mean, I would like to see that say, determined by whether it needs to go to the next step.
The public officer is making that decision that it is level 2. He's making the decision it's not a level 1.
So all level 2 complaints must be. Where does it say that?
Yeah, but he determines whether it's level 2 when he gets
I thought the presiding officer did.
Where
as a public office.
That is a good point. Where does somebody somewhere determine whether it's a level 1, 2 or 3?
In the initial assessment and referral of the application.
To the public officer. Yeah.
Okay, 7.1.
And
Public, so 7.2, the public officer assesses the severity of the complaint.
I still like to see that the CDO is,
I think
we're in consultation with the deciding member, unless it is about the deciding member, and the CEO makes the issue, the final call. But I still think it should be 2 people, not 1 person, especially for level 2s and 3s.
are we happy to have a look at the wording again, Chris, and bring it back?
Yes, absolutely. Chris's point, which we didn't carry on with, I hope we're not inventing a wheel that others have got working, spinning very well here. There are 68 councils, there are 68 DAPs. Surely we're not all trying to work this out. That wouldn't bother reading the Adelaide City Council's one because that's clearly worthless. Oh well, just reading this I can reel off, dozens of breaches. Took my tongue. Alleged breaches of possible procedure. But there are other councils who would have this stuff sorted, I would have thought.
or not.
Well, I'll put the feelers out and see what I can find. I mean, the policy that was adopted by council was based on an LGA policy that's a draft model policy.
This is 12
months old.
So they had a complaint about the LGGP not taking care of the independents?
That I'm aware of.
So can we also check that? They may have resolved it. They should have put it out if they had, but they should hear from us that we have a problem and explain why they didn't account for it.
All right, we need to move on, so we'll do some more work on it and come back, Chris.
That's right.
I would have thought that decision was left with the council. If it's an independent member.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
The council.
We can vote them in.
Yeah.
We can vote them out.
What's that, sorry?
If it's an independent member, I would have thought it wouldn't go past the CEO.
Yeah, but we're going to move on to...
Unless it was corruption or something.
Okay, so I can
Go to ICAC or something.
Yeah, look, I'm not teaching my view, but I think the independent member should know what the process is. So we invite them on. We say, by the way, here's how a complaint about you will be handled.
Totally.
And that's what you're trying to do, is to get some process written down that they know.
Thank you all.
Okay. We're just rejigging the agenda just slightly. Carolyn's going to speak first, then George second. So, do you want to introduce it?
Snippet of the video. We're just going to give you a little snippet of the video first, and then we'll talk about what we're here for.
So essentially we're here today to tell you about the principles under which we currently operate our events and to seek some information from you about whether they're working, relevant or any other ideas you've got. So that's the general purpose of the workshop. Just going to show you this. This was taken by... Oh, that's even better. Written by Jeffrey Stapleton, who was playing. I might mute it, that gives you a general sense of the music. You can still watch what's going on there. So Adelaide, South Australia and Adelaide have a great reputation for events. We run a range of them very successfully. Clipsal Fringe, the International Horse Trials, Splash Adelaide, a number of cultural events like Melee and those are all run in Adelaide. We're very much known as a city that trains and develops events that go overseas. So we have a lot of success with our events in Adelaide. That's why, you know, one of the reasons why I'm in it. We've all heard the downside of events as well. You know, they are a big time commitment. They have many stakeholders that, you know, you manage and don't become major sponsors in the end. They are resource rich, and we work with a number of volunteers that come to us untrained, and, you know, you're just on the go the whole time, and not only on the day of the event but also in the lead up. So there are downsides, but it is, which is why we're here tonight to talk to you about why it's critical to get them right and have clear principles that underpin them and clear practices to ensure that they're a success. The reason generally that people do events is they're good publicity for our organisation and for our mission and what we stand for. It's a chance to control our message out to the public about what we want the public to know of. We get to meet and engage new stakeholders, individuals and the community. It's a great way to also gain corporate sponsorship for not only the event but a range of things that we do. You honour your biggest supporters in the community with their recognition. It's fantastic volunteer engagement, so a lot of our volunteers actually come to us to do events. Passion is shared and loyal stakeholders respond very well to events, and some people only come to information through events. So Deb's going to just talk a bit about how the events support Council's delivery of the strategic.
The slide, show up. So as Carolyn said, the reason we're here is that events do take up a lot of money and they take up a lot of resources, and what tends to happen with events is that we run them, we get into that really busy event period and we run a great range of events, particularly the high profile ones like you saw with the Twilight concerts, Terrific and the Fair, and also our other events. We get feedback from you in the community as we do that, and most of that feedback is around let's have a bit of a tweak here, or maybe we could do that differently. And the thing we don't talk about so much in the off-season is what is it we're actually trying to achieve with those events. So rather than the tinkering of can you do it this way or can you add this, is are the events actually hitting the mark? So they help us deliver on the strategic plan. If they don't have a link to the strategic plan, then we shouldn't be putting resources into the events. And that's what we wanted to talk about, is where that link is, where they help us deliver our strategic plan. And if they're not, how do we tweak them so they are? Or is it a different event or a different type of program that we need? So that's what we're here, and that's why we think it's important to have that discussion now when we're not in the middle of events, so that we can be clear about how we do them going forward and how we might decide in the future and in future budgets on new events, or, dare I say it, dropping some events to add new events. So the key links in the strategic plan, if you get down into the core strategies, there's a lot of quite specific comments about events. There's one about waste management events, for example, but if we look at the 10 key focus projects in the strategic plan, the 4 that we've picked out, there's a link to many of them, but the 4 that we've picked out, love public places, involve community particularly, Prospect Road and Churchill Road, but as I said, you'll find links to all of them. If you just want to jump on to love public places, so as I said, if our events aren't making a contribution to these outcomes that you endorsed in March, then we're either not doing our events right, or we need to make some change, because this is what you endorsed as what these things are about. You can see a couple of links in Love Public Places, but that's as much about promoting use of our public places, showcasing our local character and community pride are some of the things that events can do around Love Public Places. We go on to involved community. I would hope that our events reflect most of involved community. Particularly, Council supports and facilitates opportunities for community participation and leadership, the third one. The city is connected by an active and diverse network of schools, clubs, traders. I'd say that the fair is really important in achieving that one. And you can see the others there. Community participation, leadership and initiatives are acknowledged and celebrated. You could say that volunteer celebration, etc., fits under there. So our events will achieve, I hope, but we'll discuss that, most of those. If you jump on to number 8, Prospect Road, a thriving and growing local economy, a vibrant main street, an active evening and weekend nightlife. We'd say that terrific would be a key event in achieving those outcomes on Prospect Road. And I think number 10 is Churchill Road, and having a look at if there's something we can do there with events. So that's perhaps identifying a bit more that is there a gap anywhere in our events, so something to think about. So as I said, the reason we're here is to think, are our events meeting our strategic plan? That's what we're here to find out, because if they're not, we need to do something differently.
So whilst Adelaide and South Australia do big ticket events, all local councils do events that are mainly geared at their local residents and community. Some also have tourism strategies that are layered on top of that. So City of Prospect delivers a number of events from across the corporation, so that we actually are working with different areas, the library, working with Anders with regard to the Scramble project. Many members of the community also deliver their own events within the parks, the facilities and the infrastructure that we provide. Some external community events are also funded in part by Council's grants programs. So when I was at Adelaide, some research I did was every dollar that we gave to an event or community activity, they brought between $7 and $8 back to the community based on that investment. So it's a very efficient way to get lots of activity back in for not very much investment by council. Some of our external events are the African Twilight Market, all of the end-of-year Christmas carol type events, farmers markets, local church fairs, a pop-up in Prospect markets in Vine Plaza, the Anzac reunion lunches done by the Maltese community, still music and concerts that are happening in the town hall and associated with the Adelaide Fringe, dance balls, community garden open days, fundraisers that the Friends of the Library do, like the library book sale, and things, even small things like the newly emerging Earth Hour in St Helens Park, are all events that happen because we provide facilities and as far as our open space goes, we provide it at no cost. Go on. Yes, they do. Yeah, and they're fantastic, locally focused.
I don't know whether I mentioned it to Deb in the email I sent after a quick search through the website the other day, hunting something up. In our events calendar, there's a calendar that comes up. So I went through every month. None of these events are mentioned anywhere on our own calendar. I think Terrific Prospect, a couple of them are, but that whole list you've just read out, none of them, anybody going to our website to see what's on, nothing is on there. There is one in January that's finished a long time ago that is still there, but beyond that, nobody has bothered putting one of them onto the website. I just find it extraordinary that we don't go out to our community and beyond and say, here are our events.
And I think that's a really good way, at least the ones that we know about that come through grants or through people that actually book. It could be a service we could provide to get them and direct them to support them to do that self-registration on our calendar. But yes, so I agree.
Yeah, none of our own, but well, that would be something in addition, but we don't even stick our own events on there.
The National Garage, so
So what are you after from us?
Okay, so I'm just, I was going to go through some basic principles that we provide our current events on, Australia Day and things like that, and then I'm wanting just to get some comment on the principles, because some are formal with regard to Terrific Prospect. We did have some principles originally endorsed in the very first council report, and some principles that whilst we and practices whilst we employ them, they're not formalised in any way. For example, with the Twilight concerts, we keep that as a very low-key event. You can come and not spend $1. You're not going to be hassled by children wanting
food from a whole bunch of traders. There's a little bit of food there just for people that don't get it together to come, but it's come, bring your own and have a picnic. We had a little bit of interest from other sponsors with regard to the Twilights this year, and so do we want that to become a sponsored event with lots of branding around it, or do we want to preserve its low-key, no-fuss style, because that's what we have delivered for the community over many years. So it's just to get some sense of that. So,
Carol, just how much does that cost us again?
The Twilight, mid-30s, I think.
If we have sponsors who can cover some costs for that, I don't think that as long as it's not a tobacco company or an alcohol company, I think if we can get some sponsorship, that'd be great.
No alcohol, it's paid alcohol.
I'll note that down, Bruce, and come back.
Yeah.
Do you want to work through them?
Yeah. So these are the general, and again, these are what I kind of adopted and have sort of worked to. So these are general event principles that we apply to all our events. Council is the major sponsor and host. We provide good value and good outcomes. They're inclusive and across age and culture, smoke-free, free to attend, they're not ticketed. Costs are usually just reimbursed costs for traders with regard to hiring marquees, etc. We don't ever look at them as a money-making venture for council. We can engage our key stakeholders, give volunteers new activities. It's slow, but we are making small improvements in our waste management practices, and we always have appropriate risk management and emergency plans in place. Click.
Can I just query, so the
Can we go back?
increases of all ages, because you may have a very targeted one like seniors, where it's not including obviously all ages. So it could be, I don't know, just something there.
At the moment, that's the way we run them. But if we did a specific event in which we decided it would be for over 70s or something, then it's not a problem. It's just something that we would need to acknowledge.
But look, we're like our hack and the seniors Christmas party and stuff like that. So.
But if someone came to a hack lunch and wanted to bring or needed to bring a grandchild, would they be turned away? I don't know.
They should get rid of it.
No, well, obviously you've got carers or something that would start. Yeah, but I just think we're making, you could have like generally inclusive of all ages or just something. I just think that we,
yeah.
I mean, that's what we try to be, but obviously there are going to be ones where, you know, like if it's Twilight celebration,
I think it's reasonable to have some events will be targeted.
Yeah.
You can end up with a range of events that are not much to everybody instead of targeting something. As long as people are welcome and you have an event, you have a package of programs that crosses the range of needs and wants.
So I think, you know, it's just like having a little note or I mean, asterisk or something, because otherwise we set ourselves up.
So
someone say, well, you didn't let me, you know, in, or I want to go in, but I'm not age licensed at age.
So it could be something like across council's range of events programs, we have something that is inclusive of all ages. They might not each individually be that, but across the program it is that.
Just if you could go back to the list, I mean, there's nothing in the list that I'd argue. I'm wondering, should there be more in there? And what I don't see explicit in that is the promotion of brand prospect or that civic pride or community pride aspect. So people who come to our events go, geez, this is a great place, I love living here. And next time I want to bring my friends here to show them what a great place I live in. Or that people would come from outside saying, this place is really going somewhere and I want to invest my next project in this city. That's kind of not in that.
Terrific prospect.
Like if they're friendly, you know, like being friendly or something.
Well,
I know, being some value.
the whole aspect of it.
You know,
Yeah.
But doesn't Terrific Prospect do that? Really
Exactly. Well, I think we could do it better, but yes, exactly. That's not in those objectives.
This is our overarching event principle. So if you take any one of our events, it should come up against that test.
Yeah.
The other way to achieve that is that, you know, and I'm all for this. I think our strategic plan should be something that we use the language of and the words from all the time, every day.
Right.
And the other way to do this is that our event principles is that we pull out those key aspects of the outcomes that we endorse in March, and they are actually our principles for our event. Achieving those is what we aim to do with the event. And then some of them will be more targeted. The Terrific will have the branding in it. But if you look at some of the things involved community and some of the others, they are about pride and about being involved and engaged in your community. And that would be one way to make the link for staff and to also make the link for members and the community about how important and why we have a strategic plan is that what do our events achieve? Well, here's the principles here, and they are directly taken from those outcomes.
I think you're right. I think they need to be retuned because some of the language there is not the same as the previous language. So you've got to provide best value quality outcomes for ratepayers. Well, probably shouldn't mention ratepayers here. It should be citizens or something very inclusive. Because if you don't pay rates, we're not going to know when you turn up, are we? So it's kind of an irrelevant description.
Residents and ratepayers.
What's the residents? Well, yeah, I suppose, yeah, some way.
Whatever, some other.
We just use that language up.
Something more generic. Without falling into the trap of wordsmithing it tonight. The other thing is the third bottom one says opportunity to engage our stakeholders and volunteers. I think our active community language is much more inclusive, and instead of us being in the hot seat saying, can you please come and do something that supports the community, it's almost now, I think, we want these events to be an exhibition of how our community is doing things for itself. So without getting the words right here, that whole list there looks very top-down, if you like. Council's in the driving seat. And we will put an event that you will enjoy. I think we've changed our strategic plan to be, we want this community to be pushing us around as much as we're trying to stimulate it, and our events are a great opportunity for the community to showcase itself. Like the fair is full of organisations who are telling everybody how great a job they're doing. That's why I love it. It's not, council sets the framework up, but really all we're doing is allowing all those stallholders to do amazing things and raise money. And that language in that third bottom one, doesn't quite read like that.
Whereas I think the language from involved community, the one that's most relevant on that note, is individuals, groups and organisations actively initiate and lead programs and projects of interest and benefit to the community.
It's more like that. Yeah.
So without going through words, would you be happy that we came back with the principles for events as pulling out those outcomes, using that language, and that would become the principles of the events in an overall approach?
So I guess just some of that's operational too. You might want to break it up into strategic and operational.
And I mean, you know, we've got, okay, smoke free, but then the Terrific Down Under, we've also now got dog free.
And that, you'll see that.
Let's move on to the specific one.
Dog free one.
So Australia Day is certainly an event that we promote and put on as part of our civic role. We've tried a number of approaches, and currently we are using this approach, which is it tends to be more low-key, held in the town hall. It's open. General public don't tend to attend. It tends to be family and friends. It's reasonably formal. It's lightly catered, and we follow the model as aligned with Australia Day Council and citizenship ceremonies. And we do, you know, a relative amount of decorating, but it's low key, low budget. It's recognising the people rather than creating it too much activity and event around them.
There was some discussion on our meeting about almost the point of being a bit embarrassing with the Australia Day one when the Amnesty International had. I mean, nobody was listening at all to what was being said. So are we able to change the way that happens? Some the order of things, you know, I mean, yeah, kids are all running around, they've all had their citizenship, they're all looking for the food, like it's, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to be gelling, I guess.
I suppose it depends on point too, conducted by the mayor and whatever motorcycle club he picks, you know. Pick the right one and keep people under control, Dave. Your response.
It was not as long this time because we didn't have that sponsorship thing and the ambassador come and speak, which added half an hour. Way too long. Yeah. We can do them quicker. I've seen other, and I've got a more general question for the two of you, as particularly because you've come from outside Prospect. Been involved in events for a long time, you should be helping us understand what other things we could consider. With these events, having looked at a couple of others, they don't pull everyone out the front, you know, and give them a certificate individually. I think it's nice to do. It makes people feel really special, but it does take time. That's the downside of it. But there's lots of models for doing these events, and we just keep doing the one we've done because we've never stopped to think about what's everybody else do and what's the best model.
We never used but we never used to work that way. I was wondering whether there had been a change in the whole
law has changed.
Yeah, I know some of it has changed, but you had them seated down instead of going up, getting there, then they go back up, and then they go back up again. And so it's doing it more all in the one thing, and they get their bag, the goodie bag, and their thing all in the same thing. I don't know, things running quite smoothly, and it didn't double up on going up and back, up and back.
The law has changed, and the law insists on us making them declare their oath in front of a public crowd.
That's never changed. They've always had to do that. On there, in fact, I think at Mitcham or somewhere, he refused some because they didn't say it loud enough. So anyway, aside from that, they are supposed to publicly declare it, but it doesn't mean you have to be all up and back. You have to do it in the oath and the non-oath.
Yeah, I'm open to ideas, but I've got to sign off the declaration that they've all appeared and declared their allegiance. And unless they respond to the name being called, to come out and actually say their oath, I feel a bit uncomfortable signing it off. Whereas Walkerville, they just stand up where they are in the audience and read out their oath and come out in front and get a certificate after that. So they still do that.
Yeah, you still have their name called and they come out, but it's not, I don't know, I just think it could be done more efficiently, and look, you know, by the time they've all got them, that's it.
If you go back to that photograph, that's that discussion
Australia Day
award now, you know.
just seems to then be a bit insignificant. I just think it seems to be downgrading the importance of it.
Because David, you're standing there, I didn't sign it, and this is an example, we've had more at times, you know, but that sort of thing, then all those come up and then people want to take their photos. I think the whole thing can be bigger in another way, but with that one, once you get there, and I can't even see you in that picture.
I'm off to the right.
Okay, so you're standing there, so you sign a document, say that Billy Bund over here on the white shirt in the corner, and the young lady in the blue dress, and the one there with the hat on, you actually
I watch them all. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I hope you did when you did it.
Yeah, well, I didn't sign a piece of paper, so I'm just wondering about that. But that, sorry, Chris, but that's where it mucks it up a bit, and that's where if we want to keep people sort of interested, and that's where the kids start wandering off then, and then they've got their cake and taken off. I think maybe, you know, the sort of bit go through first and shake hands and get the person up, and maybe then they do stand down the bottom or something like that. And but that bit, that's why I said go back to that. That bit can take up a whole lot, and then someone wants to get a photo in it. And
so we'll have a look at how we can do that more efficiently, but to respect the importance that it has to the individual, that to the events as a whole.
And the law, because it's very strict.
Yeah, and the, but also about the way Australia Day Awards and all that, that just seems to now just be a little added sort of, you know, I almost cringe when Denise was asking absolutely everybody. Babble, not taking any notes, but, you know.
I agree. There's people in the front row who do that. People in the front row who are talking through the ceremony. And I think that's very disrespectful.
Who's in the front row, as in
politicians.
Huh? Politics?
I can say it. You don't have to say it.
No.
Yeah.
And also,
People that are invited guests that chat away like it's nothing.
also it's very dangerous going up those very narrow steps up there, and with all those people crowded up there, I think it can't take a work health and safety issue. So I think that needs to be fixed as well.
I think we should follow the Prime Minister's example and bring back Prospect Nightlets.
I think we probably
I think
That's a beautiful photo.
Anyway, amidst all that, yes, it could be up for review. I agree with Chris that the Australia Day stuff doesn't seem to be well done, and part of that is because it's at the end of a long ceremony. The other part of it is they're all new Australians. They don't have a clue who these people are who are being awarded these things, and we get a very poor turnout, and always have, of the general public coming to these events. Lately we've had more councillors come, but we don't even get a good turnout from the council. So is it the right place to have Australia Day Awards, or should we choose, I don't know how, but some other way of doing it?
The parklands, the barbecue.
Do you want a better turnout of the general community?
Well, when we had the parkland problem, we had the barbecue, we had a lot of public turnout.
No, it's costing more and going down.
Yeah, because we had a lot of public turnout for that barbecue.
So when we used to have the breakfast, you used to get all the European wasps showed up. They had a ball with the
They were the guests.
but the
Australian Day
Lamington
you're talking about.
and the group
You know
singing.
why?
You actually did have a crowd.
Nearly all the elected
And the sun
were there.
I can remember the sun frazzling you through the trees.
A bit.
Like all the club people have been represented. They don't get fired.
All right, terrific.
And just one other thing on Australia Day is that it usually is about 3 or 4 days after Terrific Prospect. So that is new for us, and that changes a whole dynamic about actually what's possible.
But we'll change it next time to December the 3rd.
It is actually important to remember that, because if we turn Australia Day into something, our Australia Day celebration into something a lot bigger, we'll need to employ people to do it.
We don't, it doesn't need to be bigger, it just needs to be more efficiently done.
Now, I just need to interrupt. Some people get itchy feet. How much longer do we need to say?
All right, so I'll just quickly, how long?
5 minutes.
We'll try and do, yeah.
Thoughts? Do you want to? I'm still. What are you trying to achieve tonight? I'm a bit lost. Tell us. Don't go through the slides. Can you just tell us in 2 minutes what are you trying to achieve?
To give you general event principles that we're applying at the moment, and just to get some endorsement from you that we're on the right track, or that we have to rethink some of those principles.
For every event?
For our key ones, and there aren't very many because we've got the most, that first slide that said principles that apply to all events, because this will help us with making some of our decisions and some of the design and stuff that we do. I guess if we keep doing the way we've been doing it, then that's great, and you're generally happy, then that's great. But we're in a position where we're starting to do again all of our planning, and so if there are some things that we can do better because of the principles and practices, then we can look at those. So Terrific Prospect had the original objectives were endorsed in the original report. So inclusive, welcoming, reflects the village heart, and make a place where things happen. The marketing objectives, which are part of that, puts a spotlight on Prospect worldwide, showcases the new Prospect Road Main Street, promotes local business community. It's a world-class event for local residents to participate in, an event to showcase all things Prospect. We also had Win the Best Dressed Town and win a bid for the next year, but that's not really relevant with regard to necessarily ongoing, unless you want us to have an event which part of that principle is to win a subsequent bid. We now have added in it's a dog-free event and that we have cycling and riding related activities. We had a lot of pressure to put a whole bunch of vehicles in our event, classic cars and racing car fanatics because it's so close to Clipsal, and I had to keep turning them down. Now I want just so I wanted it to be a cycling and riding focused event because I thought that made sense, but you may think it's fine to have a whole bunch of racing cars at that event. Certainly has a following, they certainly have a following, but I don't know that it works in this case. So that's Terrific Prospect.
That's a good idea, bring the shooters party.
Is there some connection between what we do in our like community art?
We have always done, under the Win the Best Dressed Town, we have always run a community arts program.
Yeah, but I mean, you know,
I agree.
That could be a bit more of a standout, I think, and help us a bit more with our strategic plan.
What, David?
Pulling together.
So you have a specific objective that's about a community arts exhibition that happens at the event. Best Dressed Town can be streamers, dummies on bikes looking fancy. A community art project can be something quite, can be that, but it could be something quite a lot more than that.
That's good.
Any other comments on?
We're supposed to, they're just all caught up with Tasting Australia at the moment. I rang them last week. They hope this week, next week, so close.
What, doing what Australia?
Tasting Australia.
Any other terrific comments?
And if you I know it's late, if you think of something, flick me an email and we can...
One thing that's been really great that you guys have done fantastically well is that it's a family feel to the event, and I think we should enshrine that as a particular objective, just so we keep focused on that. Because what's happened in other ones of these is they become a cyclist focused, or they become a booze fest, or Unley's a youngies fashion food kind of thing. I really like ours. You could be 2 years old or 92 and you still feel welcome.
It's just a big fat street party, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm thinking more like intergenerational.
But it's not a street party though,
It's
a boozy party.
Intergenerational.
I just find it weird.
You know.
The one thing that I'd love to get right, and I think we do very badly every year, you can guess the next two words I would say.
Waste management.
Waste management is a bloody disgrace every year. We just don't get it right.
We got that on the overguiding principle.
Yes. We do as something we certainly try to do, but we...
So when you've got that line there, showcase all things Prospect, what...
So,
is it a chance, I mean we use the fair to showcase Prospect Council things. You're saying something different here, are you?
yeah, so all the sort of endeavours and activities that take part in Prospect, as well as food vendors and traders and people that are not necessarily on Prospect Road. So we're quite active in trying to bring them in. The local brewers and the local winemakers and those people, they all get a sort of a priority. If you're outside of the Prospect area, you pay nearly double what you do if you're within Prospect to come into the event, and we had an increased number of those this year. So, same as community groups that are at Prospect Fair, they're also able to be part of Terrific Prospect if they want to recruit.
It's not only about also promoting our brand, but also the brands of our local businesses and community groups.
Yeah, collective.
The collective branding.
One thing that's not in here is celebrating local stuff. So if we wanted to shift the Australia Day Awards to this event, it kind of doesn't fit with any of those things there. Or if we wanted to have a design awards thing, could we present it at this event? I'm not saying we should, I'm just thinking it's a great opportunity. 20,000 people there. Is this the place where we should have our peak awards presented?
But local heroes or the Australian, I don't know with the timing of it whether it's difficult to do Australian of the Year or Citizen of the Year a week before or in the week before, whether there's a problem there. But we can certainly do that.
Our volunteers or, there's things we do that we want to celebrate our community. Should we be doing some of that here? And I have to say I'm not I'm not locked in on that because I've got to open this event. It's very hard to work out how to get a crowd listening to someone on the stage. All they want to do is get a bit of grub or talk to their mates or listen to the band. It might not be the place to do it because it might just be too hard to get the crowd to be focused in.
Yeah, put on the red outfit and pretend you're a clown. That'll bring them along.
I did find a very big crowd when we had a fashion event and the outfits got less material in them. The crowd tended to be more focused at those moments.
Now, I did mention something. David then cut across me, and I thought he was bringing the same topic into Auckland's Prospect, but he was changing he was cutting across what I was talking about. You were about to talk about it. Waste. So, back on topic, not to be interrupted by the man.
Got that.
No, we didn't. Every year I push the point, David. And I turn out there, I spent 1 year sorting the whole thing out with Deb, everything was delivered wrong. This year, it was all delivered wrong again.
Let's have an explanation. What is it because we have it as a sponsor arrangement? Or is it?
In part, it's also possibly not a clear working relationship between environment here and us. It tends to come in a bit late and people are on leave and that sort of thing, so we need to get that in earlier. We also, when we have 20,000 people in that street, really you can't see the bins, so we did talk about getting some flags up high so people can see above them.
I pushed that for 3 or 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're not giving out
money.
Yeah.
In some ways, that one. And it's very difficult for people to see the bins, use them, and it's really almost impossible to move them around. So to get the empty bins out and bring the good ones in. But people are in party mode and they're not paying attention. They just see a bin, put it in, they're not even looking. So bin buddies, all those sorts of things. We had Keith up there trying to do that a bit this year, but they got overwhelmed by the people.
I would agree to that if we at least got it right at Prospect Fair. But we don't even get it right at Prospect Fair. It's a total disaster.
I think we need to be more explicit in the principles that it doesn't say continuous improvement in the core strategies in the strategic plan. One of them says run low waste events. We need to decide whether we're serious about running low waste events, and if we are, we need to be prepared to either put more money or to move some of the money that we spend on other things. Because what ends up happening is you spend the money and also staff time and resources on the things that appear to people to have an immediate outcome of isn't that great, there's entertainment over there, or isn't that great. Rubbish ain't that exciting to anyone except Ashley and I. I'm being flippant, I know it's important to lots of people, but at the event it's not something that the community tend to go, oh, wasn't that fantastic, a low waste event? And so I think to be frank, it gets a bit like let's focus on the stuff that people are either going to complain about or care about or enjoy, and we need to put it up the list of priorities if we're serious about using it as an educational approach for our community and saving money at the other end when they don't contaminate the waste stream at home. That's what we need to do. We just need to put it up the priority list and accept that to do it well, to put the flags around it, to have bin buddies, to do all of those things, to double check the delivery on the day before the fair and so on will take time and money, and that something else may give. We just be smart about what that is.
I agree. Unless it's seen as an education, program that influences what people do at home, it is a waste of resources. It's quite frankly, the money we pay to just dump it in one bin out of the vet, get rid of it, is peanuts compared to our budget. The only reason to do it, and I'm sure this is where you're coming from, the only reason to do it is that when people come to a prospect thing, they see what they should be doing at home and they go home and hopefully do it at home.
Get the kids to dog them.
And one of the ideas was to have train up the scouts. It wasn't going to cost us anything, and have them be the educators. But the key was, and everybody agreed that this side and the side, let's get really good signs. We had them printed up, and then they couldn't find them. They didn't turn up at the fair 2 years in a row. But get really so people can see them. Get big flags up, and just something again purely educative. Think before you sink or whatever. Make people think when they get to the bins because it's what they take home. Because contamination costs us 50 grand a year.
A lot of it occurs right at the end when everybody's packing up. I have to deal with old lady who put every single thing in the wrong bin, and so I had to say sort of loudly, "Oh gosh, somebody has put the wrong thing in here. This goes in here."
And it needs to be a priority for the events team, but it actually needs to be a priority for the organisation. It needs to be an environmental priority.
Because we're not waste experts. It is something that we are doing what we can do, but to actually bring in more waste experts in some of the planning and all of that a lot earlier, we can do.
It needs to be an education program,
or
it's a waste of time.
I couldn't agree more. That was the whole idea. Well, how many times have I said it sitting around here? It's purely education.
Instead of approaching it as a waste management issue, it needs to be approached as a waste management education issue.
It needs to be factored into the budget.
I'm sure volunteers could be bin buddies. Get some enthusiastic people who are just like Ashley could be a bin buddy and do a great job.
I've done that.
Yeah, but with a proper outfit on and like looking like it's there for a purpose, not some wacko standing by the bins, which is what you feel like when you're telling people where to put stuff here in plain clothes. I think you're some kind of nut.
Bin buddy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
If the council made the decision to get it off the list and forget about it, I'd just walk away and leave it. But it's part of it. We made the decision. I just want us to do it right.
All right.
Yeah, we probably need to wind up. I think what we'll do, we can defer this until next week because we've got another workshop next week. We could start off where we've left off. George has been sitting here all night as well, so we can have some more quality discussion next week, I think.
This one needs this time to really give this Twilight Concerts one a really good thing.
Yeah.
Because I continually meet people who've never been and lived here for 20 years.
So let's do that. Let's hold for now. And
they're living under a rock.
And come back next week. So next week we have the special meeting of council. We'll probably start that at 6 o'clock. Have that meeting and then have a meal and we'll start the workshop.
Have you had this in email form at all? It's not a bad idea to send.
Yeah, I'll send it out.
Okay. All right. That's probably all we have time for tonight. So unless there's anything urgent you want to raise before we finish.
Yeah. Medical centre or doctor's room in Burwood Avenue has been up before, particularly with Hyundai, the car yard, and they have generally most of their patients are not, I'm only gambling on that, are elderly people from around the place, and the parking problem on to the doctors there, and seeing them with their Hyundai people in particular, using the parks out the front and leaving their vehicles. In one breath, there's very little we can do, and I know Greg's taken it up whenever it's...
Many times, yeah.
That it's taken up, and they've got signs there, and that people abide by the signs and all that. it's not happening, and it's a lot of elderly people that are involved in this, and some of them are starting now to park in the car park was supposed to be for staff. It's empty because they're already parked out in the street in front of the doctor's seat. And of course then they're getting yelled at by some of the younger people. But I'm willing to go down there and, you know, talk with a group of them or something, the car and that, but I feel it's pretty important. I've been watching now for a couple of days and I've been rang by Trish and that, so I've been down there, and particularly maybe they teed it up, well, that's when the oldies were coming, and there's a bloke up the street, about 90, he goes there, and he was the one that started parking in the yard, so it's a real problem there.
I'll look at it again. Yep.
And I haven't got an answer, but well, I've got a few answers, but not a real one, I suppose, but I definitely hope we can look at that.
All right.
I've just got two. The Churchill Road has become more and more evident, like 250 Churchill Road. There's just so much deadwood there. Honestly, we could sell it as plywood.
That's property there.
Yeah, there's
From the
so
property.
much deadwood there. Honestly, it looks terrible. It'd be better just to clear it.
Is that on our property, or is it? I think it's on their property.
Yeah, we plant.
It's all there.
But some would be ours.
Some might be.
We
Yeah.
might need them.
We
But at least we'll get them. They're
I'll
unsightly,
check
and
it up.
somebody likes to step by or such a bit more
Might be a better outcome.
yes, and the talking about vandalism, I think there's quite some graffiti happening now on the property that's actually from our local heritage thing that's on the corner of opposite Scotty's corner. They've got fencing like around the actual
So the vacant
block, but I don't know what they're doing to deter.
People getting in there, are they?
Oh yeah, it's big time.
All up on the top floor, great huge knees.
But I'd like to find that. We should have that.
Well, you shouldn't have confessed.
But good on you for getting up.
I'm sitting there at the
Yeah,
light.
yeah, that always amazes me. Not, oh God, there's computers. Like,
Yeah.
how do they do that?
I know. Yeah, anyway, so it's just like the kind of thing.
Actually, on that block, evident elsewhere, we're getting some third-party advertising.
Yeah.
There's a guy, somebody who rents the temporary fences who's taken it upon themselves to put up all the other products that they have on offer and turn it into a display yard for themselves. Unless they're a tenant, it's third-party advertising. Other people are attaching their banners to the fence, and it's happening in a couple of other spots. So maybe Chris is gone, but Mark, if you could ask the inspector just to keep an eye out for third-party banners. They're also on the recycling depot on Churchill and Regency.
Okay.
One that I've emailed Deb, but she's one workshop away from leaving us, so I'll bring it up, and it's probably a policy decision. We don't allow people to smoke in the alfresco areas on Prospect Road. However, I notice Chibo, who are on council property, can smoke. And of course, it's pretty unfair on all the rest that we don't include that. And I would have thought, being council property, that whole area should be no smoking. And certainly their alfresco area should be no smoking. If they put tables, which they do have on Prospect Road, it's no smoking. But if they go around the side, it's smoking, and that's just...
To what extent, though?
To what extent, Edwin?
Because you've got other seats that are our seats in Vine Plaza.
Well, I would have thought no smoking anywhere in Vine Plaza myself. But certainly the alfresco area, because it's...
When do we make that rule?
Pardon?
Well, he's not suggesting we should.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I would have thought no smoking in Vine Plaza at all. It should be for places that people can go and sit under trees and not have second-hand smoke.
Well, I think that'll need a resolution of council. So
Yeah.
we could,
Well, absolutely. But the one that's particularly odd, that one is separate. But the odd one is that they can smoke on council property in the plaza, but they can't in the alfresco area.
at the time we specified Prospect Road.
We did. No, it didn't even think about there at the same time. But really, it should be part of that thing.
So we might have a look at that and bring a report back. Yeah. All right, is there anything else before we wrap up? If not, thanks for your time tonight.
Could he just sing a song or something? He said nothing all night. Did we pay him to come?
Look at the experience.
Sorry.